Chapter 1148. Speaking of it, Mu Mingyuan's ascension in the day was actually not incomprehensible. Everyone understood the truth. Yang Chun used a kind of medicinal pill that could greatly improve the cultivation base, so that Mu Mingyuan's cultivation base directly exceeded the peak Deshang stage and triggered the tribulation. Everything happened naturally. The principle behind it was very simple. Transcending the tribulation was akin to a cultivator having to pass through a passageway filled with heavy machine gun fire. The goal of cultivation was to improve one's fleshly body and strength to the point where they could withstand the barrage of heavy machine gun fire. By passing through this passageway, one would have successfully transcended the tribulation. In general, the spiritual power cultivation base was like a bulletproof vest plus the strength of the body. Of course, the cultivation of the state of mind was the ability to control. The two sides combined. One side resisted, the other side evaded or used other methods to pass through the tribulation. On the other hand, Mu Mingyuan's mental state was not strong enough, but his spiritual power cultivation was high. It was as if he was given a tank to drive through the passage. The bullets from the heavy machine guns were nothing more than tickles to him. It was too easy for him to pass the heavenly tribulation. Of course, this was not without any cost. As Yang Chan said, the lack of state of mind cultivation base was always a hard problem. Even in the spiritual world, it would break out. It was likely to take 10 times or even 100 times more time than the current cultivation to solve it. Generally speaking, the step-by-step cultivation was far better than this kind of quick success and instant benefit. This was the unchanging truth. No one could easily gain power without paying any price. The truth was clear, but the people who knew it were not necessarily so balanced in their hearts. Even if some people's state of mind cultivation base had reached a certain level, and it was even possible to successfully cross the tribulation itself was still very risky after all. When facing the wind tribulation, if one was not careful, the body and soul would be destroyed, and the body would not even be left. This was a great horror between life and death. No one would not care about it. Everyone hoped that they could have a greater chance of crossing the tribulation, and with hundreds of years of spirit power cultivation base, it was the key to saving lives at the moment of life and death. Who would not care? Even when Yang Chun and the head of the palace just rushed back to Chunyang Palace, some people had already come to the door, showing how fast the news spread. Before understanding all the details, the head of the palace would never agree to anything. After dealing with these people who came to ask for alchemy, together with the elders, they waited for Yang Chen's explanation. Actually, it's not that big of a deal. I just happened to find a top-grade spiritual herb that can increase my cultivation. Of course, Yang Chen would not say that this was obtained from the demon continent, nor would he say the origin of the demon bead. He would only say that it was an elixir that he accidentally found. Speaking of which, I'm actually very sorry for Mu Mingyuan. He was the first to take it, so he was the first to test it. After Yang Chen finished speaking, he even felt a little guilty for letting Mu Mingyuan take the medicine. Everyone understood what had happened to Mu Mingyuan back then. If he didn't take the medicine, even if he was a plant, he might be able to survive for thousands of years, and eventually he would die in the foundation stage. Now that he had ascended to the Deshang stage, it would take a longer time to repair, but it was much better than the original situation. Is there a lot of this elixir? The head of the palace asked again. This was a question that everyone wanted to know. When they heard the words, they all listened with their ears straight. Not a lot. Yang Chun shook his head directly and said very firmly, "There will be no more in the future. The root has been cut off." As soon as they heard Yang Chun say that the root had been cut off, the high-level members of the Chunyang Palace felt it was a pity. However, the joy still occupied the majority. After all, this medicinal pill was obtained by their own disciple. During this time, this disciple has been studying this kind of medicinal pill in the sect. Yang Chun also gave everyone a reassuring pill. If the research of the pill is successful, it can be said that hundreds or more can be refined. This number, Yang Chun still tried to say it as small as possible. It must be known that Shao Tian needed a lot of jelly beans, and they couldn't all be used up. What effect do you expect this medicinal pill to have? The head of the palace asked again. Each medicinal pill increases 100 years of spiritual power cultivation base, and it can be used cumulatively. Yang Chun roughly estimated it and said this judgment. Everyone listened with a burst of ecstasy. A medicinal pill that could increase 100 years of spiritual power cultivation base. No one could maintain that kind of indifference. In fact, taking medicinal pills is still an unorthodox method after all. The cultivation base that is really cultivated by oneself is the most useful. Yang Chun saw that everyone was happy and couldn't help but pour cold water on them. If it is not a last resort, don't take these medicinal pills. The gains are not worth the losses. Everyone is cultivated to the Yuanying stage, and even the masters of the Deshang stage. Naturally, they understood whether what Yang Chun said was reasonable or not. But in any case, as long as their own sect had these things in their hands, they would have confidence in their own tribulation, and the benefits were self-evident. If another sect comes to ask for medicinal pills, how should we deal with it? The head of the palace has never regarded Yang Chun as a disciple at the bottom. This kind of thing must be discussed with Yang Chun. Give it to them at a high price. Yang Chun replied without hesitation, but each sect can't exceed 50. As for the price, at this point Yang Chun stopped. Everyone looked at Yang Chun eagerly, waiting for his decision. Palace Master, how do you think the price should be set? Yang Chun did not directly say the price, but threw the ball to the head of the palace. Well, how much is the cost? The head of the palace was not polite and asked directly. The main medicine plus the dressing plus the disciple's hand, a medicinal pill, at least 1 gene of top-grade spirit stone. Yang Chun estimated it and then gave a cost price if they want it. The higher the price, the better, the more the better. If that's the case, then at least 5 gene of top-grade spirit stone. The head of the palace has been in charge of the Chunyang Palace for many years. Naturally, he knew that it was not easy for the sect to persist. He immediately increased the cost price by 5 times. Anyway, those who can ask for medicinal pills are also rich people. I'm not afraid that they can't afford this price. None of the elders had any objections, and they all nodded slightly in agreement. This was an opportunity to greatly increase the strength of the sect, and naturally they would support it. The sect will leave a few hundred. If the disciples have enough contribution in the future, they can exchange for it. Yang Chun did not hesitate to leave half of it for his sect. However, it is better not to use it. It is not a matter of life and death. It is a pity to use it. It is not too late to use it at the critical moment. Well, what is the name of this medicinal pill? The ancestor Wang Yong finally asked this question. Increasing 100 years of spiritual power cultivation, this disciple will call it the 100 Years Pill. Yang Chun gave a name very casually. Chapter 1149. The name of the 100-year pill spread like wildfire. Taking one could increase one's spiritual power by 100 years, and it could be used continuously with no upper limit. How could this not make many people crazy? If they were lucky and ate a few in a row, wouldn't they be able to ascend as well? Even Mu Mingyuan, a Qi refining stage cultivator, could ascend, let alone other Jiedan and Yuanying stage cultivators. This great news immediately spread throughout the world with the announcement of the efficacy of the pill by Chunyang Palace. More people who had lost all hope had hope again. Even Mu Mingyuan could ascend. They naturally had a chance. The questioning inner heart pill, to put it bluntly, increased the cultivation of the state of mind, and the 100-year pill could increase the cultivation of spiritual power. For those who were on the verge of breaking through, it was simply a peerless treasure that could not be sought. It was believed that as long as the 100-year pill came out, it would be crazily sought after. Needless to say, the name of Yang Chun immediately spread throughout the world of cultivators. At this time, if someone dared to speak ill of Master Yang casually, they would definitely be heard by someone who would hold their head and sell it to Master Yang. The glory of his reputation was unparalleled. The messengers of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect came directly to the Chunyang Palace to ask for the pill, and the condition was regardless of the cost. As long as Chunyang Palace asked, as long as the two major sects could do it, they would never bargain. The messengers who came to the door were none other than Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, who had just been separated from Yangchun for less than a year. No one was more suitable than the two of them, and no one had a deeper relationship with Yangchun than the two of them. The two women naturally understood what the golden ball that Mu Mingyuan took was, but they couldn't believe that the baleful demon bead would have such a large volume. One must know that it was a big ball with a diameter of 3 feet. What kind of demonic beast could condense such a baleful demon bead? Shock was shock, but when he recalled that Yangchun possessed the body of the demonified ultimate vine, a grade 2 earthly immortal realm cultivation that surpassed any other grade in this world, the demonic baleful pearl didn't seem to be so conspicuous anymore. This was no longer something that could be defined by grade 1 or grade 2. Originally, grade 1 or grade 2 demonic beads were nothing in front of this demonic bead with a radius of 3 feet. Under the guidance of Elder Hua, Sun Qingxue had endured the tempering of the demonized blue jade blood phantom vine for only a year. She had interrupted a little to let the blue jade vine restrain the toxicity of the blood phantom vine and rush over. Shi Shanshan had no choice but to interrupt her cultivation and rush over as well. It could be seen that the green jade Immortal Island and the blue cloud sect attached great importance to the 100-year pill. Husband, how many demonic baleful pearls do you have? Sun Qingxue rushed over. In fact, she knew very well that Yangchun must have already prepared it for them and would never make them embarrassed. Therefore, she was just curious about how many things Yangchun had that they didn't know. Getting the 100-year pill for the sect was definitely a great credit, and it was also a contribution to the sect. Although Yangchun said that he would not interfere with their cultivation direction, he still paved some roads for the 4 women. In the Dragon Palace of Yangchun, Yangchen's family gathered again. There was no need to worry that anyone could hear their words. The Dragon Tower, controlled by Xiao Tian, was in charge. Even if the people of the spiritual world came over, there was no way. Therefore, Sun Qingxue's questions were also unscrupulous. The other 3 women also wanted to know this question. Speaking of which, Yangchun and the 4 women have been married for many years, and none of the 4 women has been able to grasp Yangchen's family property. Even Gao Yu, who was the most important to Yangchun, was no exception. Just by taking this opportunity, everyone could understand a little bit in a certain aspect. It's not a lot, more than 30. Yangchun said the number in a very indifferent tone. What appeared at the same time as Yangchen's words were more than 30 huge golden demonic baleful balls. The smallest of them had a diameter of 5 feet, and the largest one had a radius of 10 feet. The 4 women had already experienced the experience of the demon continent and had seen a lot of demonic baleful beads. Looking at the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but be stunned and couldn't say a word for a long time. It was already a great luck for others to be able to get a first-grade demonic baleful bead in the core of the demon continent. In front of Yangchen's demonic baleful beads, it was simply a waste that could be directly thrown away. Not afraid of not knowing the goods, but afraid of comparing the goods. These demonic baleful beads in front of them, even if it was a person who didn't know the goods, after seeing that the demonic baleful bead with a diameter of 3 feet could make Mu Mingyuan transcend the tribulation and ascend within the time of the stick of incense, they could understand the value of these more than 30 golden beads. As soon as the demonic baleful bead appeared, Xiao Tan, who was cultivating in the Dragon Tower, appeared as if he smelled something delicious. He opened his mouth and was about to swallow the largest one. If you eat any one of them, you won't have share of the biggest one. Yangchun did not stop it. Just a casual sentence made Xiao Tian stop the action of his teeth touching the demonic baleful bead in time. He flew twice in the air, as if to express his dissatisfaction, and then flew back to the Dragon Tower. Is there a bigger one? Gao Yu asked herself that she was already well informed, but she was still shocked by Yangchen's words. Such a large demonic baleful bead was actually not owned by Yangchun. There's still the biggest one. Yangchun explained with a smile, but the devil chi has not been cleaned up, so it is not easy to take it out. The women suddenly understood how terrible the devil chi contained in such a large demonic baleful bead was. What was the concept of closing a bigger demonic baleful bead? If a trace of devil chi was leaked, 50% of the disciples of the Chunyang Palace would be possessed by the devil. Husband, how do we divide the 100 years pill? Sure, Shan was shocked, but she knew that they had no fate with these demonic baleful beads, so she quickly recovered and asked directly. She and son Qingxue came with the mission of the sect. Naturally, they had to give an explanation, even if they knew that Yang Chun would definitely not let them return empty-handed. Each family has a maximum of 50, and each medicinal pill is 5 pounds of top-grade spirit stones. Yang Chun directly said the price that he had discussed with the head of the palace. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect are at this price, and the others will be auctioned at this price. Speaking of which, this had already given enough face to the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, and it was also for the sake of Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan's face. When the two women got this answer, their hearts suddenly felt a lot more at ease. With this sentence from Yang Chun, they could explain to the sect, "What about yourself? Don't you need anything?" Both women understood that the price Yang Chun said was the price given to the Chunyang Palace. Yang Chun himself still needed to pay another reward. Yang Chun didn't mention it now, but the two women had a plan for their own husband. Chapter 1150. For the time being, I don't have much need here. This will also show that you have a big face. Yang Chun shook his head slightly. This time, he was refining for his two wives' sect. He had to let them go back with a lot of face. If he asked for too much, it would seem that the two women's contribution to the sect was not very big. The island master has already instructed us to give it to them. Sure, Shanshan smiled instead. She could understand Yang Chen's feelings for them, but this kind of benefit was not something that could be ignored. If you have to give it to them, then get some new fire seeds, all kinds of alchemy and refining materials. In this regard, Yang Chun did not have too many requirements. He just casually said, if there's a collection of alchemy and pill recipes, it would be the best. For Yang Chun, the fire seeds were enough. From low grade to high grade, almost all of them had been collected. There would never be too many medicinal materials, and the same was true for refining materials. The family's life source flying sword needed all kinds of high-level materials to perfect, especially for Yang Chun. The Great Yin and Yang 5 Elements flying sword was simply a black hole that swallowed materials. On this side, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue returned with Yang Chen's satisfied attitude. On the other side, the 100-year pill had already set off an uproar among the cultivators. There are many beautiful female disciples in my sect. Why can't any of them be close to Grandmaster Yang? When the news of the 100-year pill spread, it was not known how many masters in the sect began to envy the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect. Since Grandmaster Yang likes beautiful women, it seems that this is also an opportunity. Why could the Blue Cloud sect and the Green Jade Immortal Island always walk in front of other sect and get Yang Chen's medicinal pills? To put it bluntly, it was because of Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan. All the sect understood this, but at the beginning, they were too embarrassed. The big sect disdained to use their own talented disciples to do this kind of thing, and the small sect did not have any good candidates for a while. For the time being, there were no more beautiful women to harass Yang Chun. However, since the emergence of the 100-year pill, countless people have begun to think in this regard. Speaking of which, Yang Chun was indeed the perfect double cultivation partner in the minds of beautiful women. The several elements of cultivation, the dharma, the partner, and the wealth, were almost all occupied by Yang Chun. Needless to say, the spiritual power that Yang Chun cultivated, in addition to the third fire spiritual power, all the other spiritual power was the original spiritual power. Was there a better cultivation method than the original true secret art? The Dharma, the newly discovered spiritual vein in the Chunyang Palace, was definitely a good place. This was Yang Chen's Dragon Palace. Outsiders did not know about it. If it was known by others, it was not known what kind of madness it would cause. Not to mention the Tao companions, whether it was Gao Yu or Gong Sun Ling, Shi Shanshan or Sun Qingxue, They were all talented disciples with excellent cultivation qualifications, the rare outstanding disciples in 100 years. Was there a better Tao companion than them? Wealth was not to mention. Any of Yang Chen's medicinal pills, if they were exchanged for spirit stones, they could be exchanged for a lot of wealth. In particular, his identity as a fifth-grade alchemist master was the biggest treasure bowl. 4 female cultivators, not to mention anything else, just the concentrated medicinal pills refined by Yang Chen were enough to make them crazy. From the perspective of cultivation, from the Jiedan, Yuanying to the Deshang stage, there were suitable medicinal pills. The second-grade questioning inner heart pill was enough to support the consumption of the Jiedan stage to the Yuanying stage, and the questioning inner heart pill could improve the mental cultivation of a user. Not to mention these, there was also the 100-year pill, which was really a good thing to increase one's cultivation. The effect was strong. The power was great. Mu Mingyuan's experience had already played out the effect of a medicine test. Many beautiful female cultivators, because of their lack of cultivation or aptitude, had no choice but to become the Tao companions or even cauldrons of some masters. Sometimes, they had to sacrifice their future to have children for those masters. It was because they had no hope of cultivation that they made such a decision. If they had the 100-year pill in their hands, these problems would not even be worth mentioning. Didn't they see Mu Mingyuan, who could only cultivate to the foundation establishment stage, forcibly transcend the tribulation and ascend within the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn? As long as they had the 100-year pill, what bottleneck could they not overcome? What realm could they not surpass? Just this reason alone was enough to make those female cultivators who thought that they were good looking crazy. If coupled with the appearance pill, which was a must-have magic weapon for all female cultivators, even the most arrogant female cultivators, as long as Yang Chen waved his hand, they would definitely obediently come in front of Yang Chen. It was unknown how many people sighed at the good luck of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. After all, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were Yang Chen's master and senior sister, so it was normal for them to be the first to enjoy the moonlight. And Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue unexpectedly also seized such an opportunity. How could people not be envious? Grandmaster Yang's life experience was also unearthed by people. In fact, except for the location of his family, Yang Chen did not hide anything. Soon, those people knew that Yang Chen and Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue actually met on the execution ground. Many people wished that they could replace Shi Shanshan and become the heroine who met Yang Chen on the execution ground. This kind of good luck, which was so heaven-defying that all the women in the world were jealous of it. How could Shi Shanshan, a girl blessed by the heavens, be able to encounter it? She couldn't have such a good aptitude and good luck, right? This was not fair. Hundreds of years ago, when Shi Shanshan, the cold plum fairy, a gold core expert, had an entanglement with Yang Chen, countless people still secretly scolded Yang Chen for being a toad that wanted to eat swan meat. Now that they thought about it, the cold plum fairy's vision was so outstanding that she chose Yang Chen among countless experts. She really had a unique insight. In any case, the 100-year pill was desired by countless people. Other sects also sent their own messengers and began to negotiate with Chunyang Palace. This time, Hall Chief Su of the Foreign Affairs Hall of Chunyang Palace was a little surprised that the representatives of each sect who came to Chunyang Palace either had an enchanting beauty or had an enchanting beauty by their side. All the messengers requested to talk with Yang Chen face to face. Even though Hall Chief Su was experienced in the battlefield, he had never seen such a scene. He had to decline these requests for the time being, dumbfounded. Of course, the reason for his refusal was also very good. Grandmaster Yang felt that the effect of the medicine last time was too strong and needed to be readjusted to make the effect more gentle. Therefore, he was studying the elixir in seclusion. Normally, after such a refusal, the representatives of each sect only needed to negotiate with Chunyang Palace about the 100-year pill. However, all the sect's reaction was surprisingly consistent. All the beauties stayed behind and waited for Grandmaster Yang to come out of seclusion in the mountain gate of Chunyang Palace. Chapter 1151. Yang Chun said that the effect of the last pill was more violent, which the cultivators could understand. Although it was a good thing for Mu Mingyuan to ascend within the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn, it was not necessarily a good thing. Everyone knew that no matter what, the cultivation base that relied on external things was always not as good as the cultivation base that was cultivated by oneself. Therefore, no one would use this method unless it was a last resort. However, not everyone had absolute certainty that they could ascend. Those who could resist the heavenly tribulation, those who did not have much certainty before the tribulation, were those who encountered a bottleneck and could not break through, and their lifespan was already insufficient. The 100-year pill for them was the key to saving their lives. Suddenly increasing 100 years of cultivation base, no matter from which aspect, was a great event. Increasing confidence, increasing ability when necessary, it would give the person who took it an extra life. In particular, the effect of the 100-year pill could be accumulated, which was even more amazing. Taking 100 years of cultivation base, if it was not enough, then take it again. In theory, what happened to Mu Mingyuan could happen to everyone. As long as there were enough 100-year pills, then, as long as one was a cultivator, they could ascend without a doubt. If the cultivation base of the state of mind was insufficient, wasn't there still the questioning inner heart pill to make up for it? Even if it couldn't make up for everything, at least it could make up for part of it. As for the others, when they arrived in the spiritual world, would they be afraid that there would be no master to guide them? At this time, Yang Chun had become a target in the hearts of countless people. Of course, it was inevitable that he would become the target of more people. If people were only coveting the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill before, now those people could not wait to directly grab the pill recipe of the 100-year pill. Such a heaven-defying pill. How could it be in the hands of one's own people? Even if Yang Chun were to refine pills for others, how could he be at ease when refining pills for his own people? Not to mention anything else, at least the Taishaman had such a thought. It had to be said that Yang Chun had indeed shocked the Taishaman in recent years. From the heaven-seizing pill, to the questioning inner heart pill, to the inner sensing pill, and to the 100-year pill, it was more and more shocking. At this time, Sect Masterly wished he could go back to the past and directly burn the bones of the guy who dared to throw Yang Chun out of the sect before he could speak. With such a disciple, the Taishamen who came to join first were thrown out abruptly, and Chunyang Palace took advantage of them. Such an experience made the higher-ups of Taishamen grit their teeth every time they thought about it. The guy who was in charge of recruiting disciples back then had been punished time and time again. However, no matter what he did, he could not quell the anger of the Taishamen's higher-ups. He could only vent his anger by being punished by the higher-ups again and again. Naturally, Taishamen also sent a representative to Chunyang Palace to discuss the matter of the centenary elixir. Mao Qi didn't want to deal with Yang Chun for a long time. This time, the senior management also sympathized with his mood and directly replaced him with another elder of the Deshang stage. The elder sent by Taishamen this time, Tao Junki, was a woman with a strong cultivation base, but there was a slight deviation in her cultivation. She had been stuck in the bottleneck of the late Deshang stage for hundreds of years. Originally, this elder Tao Junki already had a middle-aged appearance, but after taking the appearance pill from the Wanbao Tower, she still restored her youthful and beautiful appearance. This time, she not only wanted to reach an agreement with Chunyang Palace to purchase the centenary elixir, but she also wanted to establish a further relationship with Yang Chun. Speaking of which, Elder Tao Junki could definitely be considered as an expert with good aptitude. She was once a famous fairy, but she had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few hundred years, so outsiders had gradually forgotten her name. His splendid outfits immediately attracted the attention of countless people. Taishamen sent a representative. The Five Elements sect and the Qinquan sect were also not willing to show weakness, especially the Qinquan sect. This time, they directly brought another female disciple of the sect who was as famous as the Cold Plum Fairy and the Dancing Snow Fairy, Shiwushuan. Fortunately, the Qinquan sect did not directly propose to Chunyang Palace to marry Yang Chun, but their purpose was already clear. The appearance of the greenwood fairy Shi Wushuang was not worse than that of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, but she did not have the opportunity to contact Yang Chun. He believed that as long as they could get to know each other and get along for a period of time, it was not impossible to snatch Yang Chun from the hands of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. Other small sect leaders could not pay attention to them, but the people of Taishimen, the Five Elements sect, and the Qingquan sect must be paid attention to. The representatives of these three sects were settled in the mountain gate of the Chunyang Palace, and the reception was very high. Of course, fortunately, a large number of core disciples of Chunyang Palace were now practicing in the Blue Vault Mountain Immortal's Cave. The temporary strength of Chunyang Palace did not attract the special attention of the representatives of the three major sects. Now everyone's attention was focused on Yang Chun. Yang Chun was indeed in seclusion now. Yang Chun had already come up with a refining method when he was in the mortal world, but he had not yet put it into practice, so he must experiment. Of course, the experiment must be the small demonic beads purchased from the demon continent. Yang Chun still had a lot of these things just to experiment. This was the first time that Yang Chun had refined a medicinal pill that was not in his own memory after his rebirth. For this reason, Yang Chun had just considered it for hundreds of years. The monarch, minister, assistant, the conflict of various medicinal materials, the control of the fire, he had already had a preliminary concept before he started. Fortunately, there were the dregs and tips in the medicine nourishing gourd. Yang Chun had practiced a lot later and had a considerable understanding of the medicinal properties of various medicinal materials. This time, he experimented with refining the 100-year pill. After only 5 experiments, he had already touched the doorway and began to determine the pill recipe. After several more experiments, Yang Chun had completely determined the pill recipe. When to add what auxiliary medicine, what kind of fire to control, when to add the demonic bead, it was completely determined. The profound spirit furnace had become stronger because it had absorbed twice the demonic fire before. When Yang Chun finally formed the pill, he directly got the second grade 100-year pill. Even Yang Chun had a hunch that if the profound spirit furnace could absorb the 6th and 7th grade fire seeds, he could directly refine a 3rd grade medicinal pill. Even if it had not reached the 3rd grade, the medicinal effect of the 2nd grade 100-year pill was already very strong. According to Yang Chun's calculation, with such a large amount of medicine, the 100-year pill should be able to increase the cultivation base of the consumer by 100 years. But now, after Yang Chun's spiritual awareness exploration, it was initially estimated that it could increase the cultivation base by about 150 years, and the medicinal effect was stronger by 1.5 times. This was the first time that Yang Chun had created a medicinal pill by himself, and the pill recipe was also his own original creation. The successful refining of the 100-year pill, Yang Chun was even happier than the successful refining of the questioning inner heart pill. However, as soon as he came out, Yang Chun found that he had to face a lot of women. Chapter 1152. Yang Chun did not expect that he had married 4 wives, but he was labeled as a lecherous person from the bottom of his heart, and then they used such a method to deal with him. It may seem a bit excessive to say that they dealt with him, but it was more appropriate to describe it as pleasing. The only 5th grade alchemist, plus the questioning inner heart pill and the 100-year pill, was enough to make anyone who was not confident move. Of course, when Yang Chun came out, he did not see these guests, but his own wife, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling. The 2 women now lived together with Yang Chun, and their servants were also together, responsible for serving the 3 people's daily lives. The place where Yang Chun retreated was the Dragon Palace that had been transformed into an ordinary house, and the 2 women could go in to cultivate at any time. As for others, they did not have this blessing. Many people came to ask for pills. Yang Chun just asked about this, and there was no surprise. A lot. Gao Yu smiled and nodded. And there are unexpected surprises. What unexpected surprises? When Yang Chun asked again, whether it was Gao Yu or Gong Sunling, they no longer answered, but a burst of laughter, very mysterious. So, after Yang Chun met the head of the palace and the elders, he was brought to the representatives of these sects. Looking at a group of beautiful female cultivators, Yang Chun could not help but stare. In fact, the agreement with the sect has basically been reached by the head of the palace. It was still according to the previous discussion with Yang Chun. The five major sect would each get 50 pills, and some other first-class sect, with a good relationship with Chunyang Palace, each sect would temporarily get 10 pills, and it was hard to say if the relationship was bad. However, the price of all the 100-year pills must be based on the highest price of the first 10 auctions in the auction house of Wanbao Tower. Except for the 100 pills of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect, which were obtained at the most favorable price. Even if the Taishaman wanted medicinal pills, the price tag must follow this procedure. It was not that no one had tried to buy the Wanbao Tower. As long as everyone worked together and did not raise the price during the auction, they might be able to get the tower at a higher price than the reserve price. However, as soon as he said this, he was scolded by people who knew what was going on. Are the people of Chunyang Palace fools? As long as they arrange for one person to participate in the bidding, how many times will the price increase? He didn't care where his saliva was flying to. Auction, honestly, don't play any tricks. If you provoke him, what if he doesn't sell? With just one sentence, all the fellows who had evil thoughts about auctioning were all blocked. Now the initiative was in the hands of Chunyang Palace. They could do whatever they wanted. The current Chunyang Palace was not a soft persimmon that could be pinched by anyone. If it was the previous Chunyang Palace with only 8 Yuanying stage ancestors, not to mention a big sect like Taishaman, any first-class sect could directly destroy Chunyang Palace and then grab Yang Chun along with the medicinal pills. But now no one dared to use this brain at will. Now in Chunyang Palace, there were hundreds of Yuanying stage ancestors, and the number had exceeded 400, which was not counting the endless Deshang stage masters. There were already 5 of them on the surface. Who knew how many were in the dark? Even if there were no, Chunyang Palace had the 100-year pills in their hands. If they found that they were not a match, as long as they made a little determination, they could turn more people into masters of the Deshang stage. This was not counting the alliance relationship between Chunyang Palace and the Blue Cloud sect of the Green Jade Immortal Island. Even if there was no Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, there were always countless people who wanted to make friends with Chunyang Palace who would take the initiative to come forward. They were worried that they couldn't find a bond to get closer to Master Yang. Some people dared to do this, which was the biggest opportunity for these people. So far, dozens of heads have been sent to Chunyang Palace. After the news of the 100-year pills came out, there were the heads of the guys who wanted to harm Chunyang Palace and Yang Chun. And among these heads, there were gifts from several major sects. Greetings, Master Yang. When they saw Yang Chun, a group of beautiful sect representatives all greeted him, which made the reception disciples of the Foreign Affairs Hall of Chunyang Palace, who had never seen such a scene, stunned. A group of all kinds of beauties, and they were all famous beauties in the mortal world, gathered in front of Yang Chun. If a certain lecherous king in a mortal world knew about it, it was not known how he would envy Yang Chun's luck with women. Little sister Tao Junkie, this is a gift from my sect to Master Yang. Tao Junkie took the lead and presented a jade slip and a chinquin bag with both hands. Negotiating with the head of the palace was a matter between the sect. This was purely a reward for Yang Chun, although this time Yang Chun did not intend to receive any specific reward. However, Tao Junkie, a Deshang stage elder, actually called herself a little sister in front of Yang Chun, which made the women of other sect despise her. When Tao Junkie's things were delivered, the other beauties did not hesitate to send the same thing. One by one, they were more and more intimate, and even Brother Chun was called out without hesitation. Basically, everyone took out a jade slip and a chinquin bag. The chinquin bag contained a reward, and on the jade slip were the conditions offered by the sect. This was the meaning of Hall Master Su. There were so many people here, naturally it was not good to say it one by one. In this way, it was also a way to express it. It was very similar to the project bidding in the later generations, but here, it was only for Yang Chen's benefit. Yang Chen already knew that in this regard, he accepted the jade slip first. As for the chinquin bag, no one took it. If he took something, it meant that the transaction was reached. Yang Chun would not make such a mistake. However, when receiving these jade slips, some female cultivators even secretly and deliberately put their jade hands on Yang Chen's hands. The meaning of seduction was very obvious. This was still a slightly reserved performance. A few of them could not pretend to be careless and directly throw themselves into Yang Chen's arms. Coming out of the Foreign Affairs Hall, even if Yang Chen had the memory of a great principled golden immortal, he could not help but break out in a cold sweat. So many women, such a big battle, the average person was really not necessarily able to control it. How do you feel? Isn't it good to be a heartthrob? Hall Master Su next to him could not help but tease Yang Chen. It seemed that he was happy to see Yang Chen's embarrassed appearance. A tall tree catches the wind. Yang Chen shook his head helplessly, with a look of lingering fear. Although Yang Chen had expected that the appearance of the 100-year pill would cause a sensation, it was inevitable that it would be pursued by the sect. However, Yang Chen had never thought that the fact that he had 4 wives would also be regarded as the evidence of his lust, and all of them began to have ideas about him from this aspect. Chapter 11:53. The conditions offered by each sect were nothing more than to get more century-old dawn from Yang Chen, and they were willing to pay the price for it. This was Yang Chen's own idea, but he still underestimated the other people's desire for a 5th-grade alchemist like him. From reading those jade slips, Yang Chen found that at least hundreds of sects expressed their admiration for Yang Chen, hoping that he could come out of Chunyang Palace and join their sect. Among these sects, there were Taishaman, 5 Elements sect, and Chinquin sect. There were also hundreds of first-class sects. Betrayal was a big stain in the cultivation world, but all the sects' tone was the same, so Yang Chen didn't have to worry about this small problem. As long as he was willing to join their sect, all the follow-up problems would be solved by these sects. As for the smaller sect, it was estimated that they knew their own business, so they only asked for century-old dawn and didn't mention anything about Yang Chen betraying their sect. As for the Taishaman, 5 Elements sect, and Chinquin sect, in addition to inviting Yang Chen to join their sect, made another request. If Yang Chen didn't want to betray his sect, then he would ask to buy the century-old dawn. Anyway, Yang Chen had sold the century-old dawn before, so he wouldn't refuse this time, as long as the price was enough. Of course, the price that each sect was willing to pay was really tempting. All kinds of wealth and status were available. In addition, there was a condition that made Yang Chen dumbfounded: beautiful women. Each sect was willing to use the best female disciples of their sect as the price in exchange for Yang Chen's cooperation. Among them, the 3 big sect, Taishaman, 5 Elements sect, and Chinquin sect were the most generous. In the future, Fairy Greenwood would become as famous as Fairy Cold Plum and Fairy Dancing Snow. She was also one of the few experts in the Chinquin sect in the Immortal world. Like Sun Qingxue, Fairy Qing Mu also had a wood attribute spiritual root, which was also close to full value. It could be said that whether it was in terms of cultivation, appearance, or future achievements, she was comparable to Sun Qingxue. In particular, there was one thing about Fairy Greenwood that Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan could not hope to catch up to. Unlike Shi Shanshan, who only focused on cultivation, and Sun Qingxue, who was pure and innocent, Fairy Greenwood was a master at using money and power. In the immortal dimension, Fairy Qing Mu could be considered to have a wide circle of friends. She treated others well, handled matters appropriately, and was graceful. She had the demeanor of a strong woman. Compared to a pure master like Shi Shanshan, there was a different kind of attraction. Such a fairy could go up to the hall, go down to the kitchen, and enter the boudoir. It was not known how many people wanted to be the Tao companion of Fairy Greenwood. However, although Fairy Greenwood had a wide circle of friends, she was also very self-respecting. Before Yang Chen died, he had not heard of anyone who could get the favor of Fairy Greenwood, or a master who was too good was destined to have such a fate. Those who liked Fairy Greenwood, in front of Fairy Greenwood, they could not help but feel ashamed of their inferiority. They simply could not stand her seemingly decent, but there was a noble aura from the heart. Such a fairy was willing to become a Tao companion with Yangchun for the sake of the sect. It had to be said that the Qinquan sect generosity was unique. Of course, it was also related to the fact that Fairy Green would had not really grown up. Tao Junkie of the Taishaman, needless to say, she was an elder of the Deshang stage, with excellent qualifications, and her appearance and figure were top-notch. If there was only one shortcoming, it was that she was hundreds of years older than Yangchun. But after cultivating for a long time, who would care about a mere few hundred years? Wasn't sure Shan Gaoyu also 100 years older than Yangchun? It was a pity that in the late Deshang stage, Tao Junkie's cultivation slightly deviated. Even after the guidance of senior Lu Fengzi, it could not be completely corrected in a short time. Now, Tao Junkie had a direction to correct it. What was missing was only time. Moreover, Yangchun was very clear about Tao Junkie's future. In the immortal world, she was also a hall master of the profound heaven sect. Her cultivation and combat power may not be comparable to Shi Shan, but the name of Fairy Green could also deter a large number of people. Such a master was even willing to become a Tao companion with Yangchun for the sake of the sect. Because the gap between the two sides was not small, Tao Junkie was even willing to serve as Yangchun's cultivation furnace before Yangchun's cultivation was promoted to her realm. It must be known that Tao Junkie had an innate fire attribute spirit root, which was an absolute match for Yangchun's innate spirit root. Acting as a cauldron was to make her own cultivation stagnate, which was completely helping Yangchun. A master of the late Deshang stage as a cauldron. Who could imagine it? Coupled with Tao Junkie's identity as an elder of the Taishaman sect, such an arrogant position. It was simply a scene that would make countless people salivate. Want to have a face? Want to have a heart? Would there be a man who could refuse such a temptation? As for the Five Elements sect, they came up with 5 beautiful women at once. These 5 beautiful women were quintuplets themselves. The figure and appearance were exactly the same, and it was difficult for the world to distinguish them. This was not the most special. The quintuplet sisters were born to occupy one of the 5 elements. When the 5 people were combined, it was a complete 5 elements formation. In particular, the 5 women were almost interlinked. The power of the formation was simply unparalleled. In Yangchun's mind, there were memories of the 5 sisters of the 5 elements sect. Although the qualifications of the 5 sisters were not as good as Shi Shan and Sun Qingxue, the difference was also limited. The 5 women were the masters of the 5 elements sect in the immortal world. Just the 5 women had blocked the crazy attacks of the devils in the immortal world for no less than hundreds of times. The 5 elements sect could stand tall in the immortal world and had a direct relationship with the 5 women. Now, many people knew that Yangchun was the simultaneous cultivation of the 5 elements. The 5 sisters were exactly the same, but they belonged to the 5 elements. It was simply the most suitable for Yangchun to be a double cultivation companion. Of course, the age of the 5 women was a little older, but they were older than Shi Shan, but not as old as Tao Junkie. Their current cultivation base was just at the early Deshang stage. Compared with the beauties of the 3 sects, the other sects' beauties were not on the same level at all. Those women who still needed Yangchun to use the 100-year questioning inner heart pill to improve their cultivation base, could they be compared with these who would be all-powerful in the immortal world in the future? From his point of view, the 3 sects really showed their sincerity. Of course, on the other hand, it also showed that they were not generally optimistic about Yangchun. After all, a master of the 5th grade alchemy master in the mortal world was only in the early and middle Yuanying stage. Who knows if he would reach the realm of the 6th grade alchemy master before ascending? Such an alchemy genius, coupled with those peerless medicinal pills, was enough to tempt any sect. Chapter 1154. To be honest, when he saw these conditions, Yangchun was really a little surprised. These were the prices of Yangchun's service. Although it was a bit high, there were the previous examples of the Green Jade, Immortal Island, and Blue Cloud sect. The 2 major sects had been taken care of by Yangchun. These prices were not very surprising. It was just that Yangchun did not think that the 5 Elements sect and Shinquan sect in Taishaman were willing to pay such a price for him alone. It must be known that this did not include the loss of reputation brought about by Yang Chen's betrayal. In this regard, if the three major sects wanted to settle it was bound to cost a higher price. If it was anyone else, it was estimated that they would not be able to bear such a temptation. From a small sect to a core disciple of one of the five major sects, and there was a beauty accompanying him. It was definitely a promotion like a carp leaping through the dragon gate. But this happened to Yang Chun. It could only be said that the three major sects still underestimated Yang Chun. To put it bluntly, it was a serious underestimation. The Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect were also the five major sects, and their respective genius disciples were now Yang Chen's wives. Even if Yang Chun wanted to jump ship, he would at least choose one of the two more familiar sects, right? They believed that with Yang Chen's ability, he would definitely be better valued in the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. As for the other small sects, not to mention, Yang Chun did not have to consider them. These things could be given to Gao Yu and Gong Sunling for fun. There was no need to discuss it on the table. It was simply impossible to agree. The 100-year pill experiment was successful, and Yang Chun still needed to refine a batch. This time, he used the demonic beads of the demonized vines. Presumably, a lot of medicinal pills could be produced in one furnace. Soon, Yang Chun went into seclusion again to refine pills. Everyone was mentally prepared for this. The first time was to test the waters, and they did not expect Yang Chun to be moved. When the 100-year pill was officially launched, it would be the climax of everyone's struggle. When he was refining the 100-year Dan, Yang Chun had already considered the reduction of the medicinal efficacy caused by the separation of the huge demonic beads. Because of the separation of the extremely strong medicinal efficacy, Yang Chun had gathered all of it into a few special 100-year dawn, turning them into the core of the core. The first batch of 100-year pills produced close to 1,000 second revolution 100-year pills. Among them, 10 of them had even reached the fourth revolution. According to Yang Chen's estimation, they could increase one's cultivation base by 800 to 1,000 years. It wasn't an exaggeration to call them 1,000-year pills. In particular, these 10 pills were the core of the medicinal effects. Basically, they could be said to be the essence of this cauldron of pills. Next, Yang Chun continued to refine. After spending 2 demonic beads, he had obtained a total of nearly 5,000 second revolution, 100-year dawn, and 54th revolution, 100-year dawn. After 1 year, Yang Chun came out of seclusion again. He handed a part of the medicinal pills to the sect and gave 10 of the rest to Shanghai Feng, asking him to start the auction in the Wanbao Tower. Many sect members were waiting for the official 100-year Dan to appear so that they could personally see its medicinal efficacy. Some things were just hearsay, but seeing was believing. Although it was unlikely that the thing that happened to Yang Chun was real, it was better to be safe than sorry when it came to this kind of expensive pill. The first 100-year dawn were all bought by others. The most expensive one even reached the price of 12 kilograms of top-grade spirit stones. This price was also the price at which the major sect members wanted to get the goods directly from the Chunyang Palace in the future. As for if they wanted to get more, they needed to compete with others in the auction house. At every moment, there were countless masters who were trapped in the bottleneck of their cultivation base or even near the end of their lifespan. These 100-year dawn were almost taken within the territory of the Chunyang Palace within a day after the auction. It had to be said that Yang Chen's reputation in alchemy was still very strong. 10 medicinal pills allowed 8 Yuanying stage masters who were trapped in the realm to break through the bottleneck, and 3 of them almost triggered the Yin Fire Tribulation on the spot and successfully crossed the tribulation. The rest also made progress in their cultivation base. The remaining 2 were masters of the Deshang stage. One entered the late Deshang stage from the middle Deshang stage, and the other entered the middle Deshang stage from the early Deshang stage. The 100-year dawn were all successful. At this time, no one doubted the efficacy of the 100-year Dan. They began to prepare the spirit stones and planned to bid at the next auction. When the news came, the major sect came to the door and began to buy medicinal pills. Anyway, Chunyang Palace promised to give a batch of medicinal pills to the major sect in batches. These medicinal pills must be in their hands first. The Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect still sent Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, but they were accompanied by 2 elders of the Deshang stage. After all, these medicinal pills were invaluable, and there must always be a master to protect them. The time interval was not long. When the husband and wife met, they were happy. Yang Chun still gave each of the 2 women a small surprise. This medicinal pill is different from those. It can basically increase the cultivation base of 800 to 1,000 years. Yang Chun took out 4 core Millennium Dawn and gave 2 to each of the 2 women. You keep one for yourself, just in case at a critical moment. The other one will be handed over to the sect as a gift from your husband to your mother's family. A Millennium Dan, if either of the 2 women took it, the consequence of increasing their cultivation base by 1,000 years was that they could directly reach the peak of the Deshang stage. In a mortal world, it was basically impossible for anyone to hurt them. The other one was given to the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. The 2 women were now powerful, and their status in their respective sect had been improved. Coupled with Yang Chen's sparing no effort to support them, it was impossible not to be valued by the sect. Our husband is now in high demand. A large number of beautiful women are willing to send themselves to the door, Gao Yu said with a smile when she received the 2 younger sisters in the sect. After the official business was done, when the family was reunited, Gao Yu and Gong Sunling naturally made fun of Yang Chen. Those jade slips that recorded the conditions of the sect became a happy pastime for the 4 women. Every beauty that had been heard of would be taken out by the 4 women to comment on it. Even the level of individual beauties, like the fairy Qing Mu, would be specially taken out to comment on it. Here was suitable, there was not suitable, what were the benefits of accepting it, and so on. It was as if the 4 women were choosing a concubine for Yang Chun. In the face of the 4 women's happy teasing, Yang Chun was also full of happiness. Half lying on the slender waist of Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, he closed his eyes comfortably, listening to the 4 proud women talking about these gossips that only women in the mortal world would talk about. His heart was calm and full. Such a life? Was it a real life of flesh and blood? Chapter 1155. Although they were happy, no one would take it seriously. Yang Chun would never betray the sect. The 4 women knew this from the beginning, and naturally they would not agree to the conditions of those sect. Moreover, even if the women from the 3 major sects were stunning, so what? The 4 beside him were not easy to deal with. Whether it was in terms of appearance, figure, or emotional foundation, they were not something that a few random beauties could compare to. The 4 women did not even feel any threat from him. The sect wants the pill recipe. After the family enjoyed enough reunion time, Shi Shanshan reluctantly said another small request of her own sect. It's the same for us here. Sun Qingxue also whispered. In their eyes, being able to get the medicinal pill at the base price was already Yang Chun looking at their face to take care of their own sect. Now that he wanted the pill recipe, it seemed a bit greedy. It's not surprising. Yang Chun smiled and was not surprised at all. His arms tightened, and he kissed the faces of the 2 women gently. Don't worry, I will sell the pill recipe of the questioning inner heart pill. The 100-year pill is nothing, as long as there is enough price. The 2 women might just want an answer and did not put forward any price on the spot. However, with this result, they could already go back, and it was still the kind of contribution. However, I think you should try to convince the sect as much as possible. It's better not to. Yang Chen suddenly added another sentence. When I refine the space connection point, the baleful demon bead will become less and less until there is no more, and it doesn't make much sense to get it. If your sect doesn't mind, then come and talk. This time I will give you 20% discount. The last time the questioning inner heart pill, Yang Chun gave the 2 sect a 50% discount. This kind of thing couldn't happen again and again. So although Yang Chun still gave the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect discounts for the sake of the 2 women, it had already improved a lot. The sect wanted to get the century-old pill as soon as possible. Many representatives of the sect were waiting in the Chunyang Palace. As soon as the result of the auction was announced and the pill took effect, someone immediately took out enough spirit stones to take the pill away. The five great sect were rich and overbearing. Only the five great sect could gather the required spiritual stones for 50 elixirs in one go. However, Yang Chun soon met the representatives of the five elements sect and the Chinquan sect in Taishaman again. However, they were not the same women as last time. This time, they once again gave Yang Chun a jade slip, which recorded a little bit of the requirements of the three major sections. Yang Chun wasn't surprised that the three great sects were asking for elixir recipes. What these big sects wanted was to control things in their own hands as much as possible. If they had a big business, this idea was not wrong. If they were always under the control of others, of course, it would not be as good as their own. Moreover, several big sects would even often announce some research results to gain fame. Yang Chen's questioning inner heart pill, including the heaven and earth everlasting spirit suppressing formation, was obtained from the spiritual world for this reason. What surprised Yang Chen was that Tao Junki, Fairy Ching Mu, and the five-element sects quintuplets were still the price of the three great sects exchanging elixir recipes. No wonder they were not allowed to come this time. It was because of this reason. Yang Chen already had 4 wives, and 2 of them were disciples of the five great sect. In the eyes of others, it was not a big deal for Yang Chen to have a few more wives. These women, whether it was their origin, appearance, or cultivation aptitude, would not disgrace Yang Chen. Now Yang Chen just didn't understand. For a pill recipe of a mere 100-year elixir, the three great sects were willing to pay such a price. Wasn't it a bit too much? This was not the full price. The other conditions were that each of them had to pay rare fire seeds, top medicinal materials, and refining materials. It could almost be said that these fire seeds and medicinal materials alone were enough to buy the elixir recipe. The three great sects also had to pay the price of beautiful disciples, which was really a bit speechless. In fact, Yang Chen was still in the game, and there were some things that he couldn't understand. Although Yang Chen had planned his own future, he was far from imagining what kind of position he would have in the eyes of the five great sects in the future. An alchemy genius who was a 5th-grade alchemist master when he was in the Jidan stage, what kind of expectation would he have when he reached the Deshang stage? For Yang Chen, he had already experienced the experience of the demon continent. Was there any suspense in breaking through to the Deshang stage? Such a person, no matter what, the major sect wanted to win him over. Even if he was not in their own sect, they must always maintain a good relationship. Now, in this respect, the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect had already walked ahead, and the other 3 sects certainly had to catch up. Sending these female disciples was hoping to form a good karma with Yang Chen. In the future, when Yang Chen had any benefits through these female disciples, they could also fight for some good prices. Even several sects speculated that Yang Chen might have a magic weapon that parasitized the primordial spirit of a predecessor, and they also wanted these female disciples to find it from Yang Chen by all means. Based on this reason, building a relationship with Yang Chen in advance has become the priority of several major sects during this time. Even if the Taishaman had the universe everlasting spirit suppressing formation, they were also pondering this point. At least before the formation exerts its power, they must first win over Yang Chen. Only waiting for one day in the future, they would directly take over the Chunyang Palace with the power of thunder. In this regard, Yang Chen did not conceal it from his wives. After showing it to them, Yang Chen gave a reply to the great sect. It was still the old rules, 2 kinds of 7th-grade fire seeds or other materials of equal value. As for people, they did not have to consider it for the time being. What Yang Chen did not expect was that the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect were fine, but the other 3 major sects unanimously said that Yang Chen did not have to bear the pressure of the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect. They would solve this coordination by themselves. But the female disciples who promised to Yang Chen told him bluntly that they would propose marriage to the head of the palace. Propose marriage? Hearing this, Yang Chen shook his head directly like a rattle. What was this? In the past, when he proposed marriage to Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue, many people were laughing at him. Now, the 3 major sects actually reversed and wanted to propose marriage to the Chunyang Palace. It had to be said that the changes of the world really made people speechless. Yang Chen naturally disagreed. What a joke! How could he accept it without any friendship? Even sure Shan had been in contact before, and then they came together step by step. How could a few sex words make Yang Chen nod his head? However, the three major sects' thoughts were very determined, and they even directly announced this matter to the public. As soon as the news came out, there was another commotion in the Tao sects. Chapter 1156. It was not that there was no precedent of marriage between them. Chunyang Palace and Blue Cloud sect and Green Jade Immortal Island were obvious examples. Of course, compared with the two major sects, Chunyang Palace was still considered a weak force. If they stood in the perspective of a sect and had to be divided into primary and secondary, then the pure Yang Palace was a bit too high. However, when the news of the three major sects proposing to Chunyang Palace came out, no one thought that the three major sects were trying to please Chunyang Palace. Everyone understood that all this was just for one person, Yang Chen. Yang Chen also used his own series of unique medicinal pills to prove to everyone that he was fully qualified to be courted by the three major sects. There was no doubt about this, and no one had any objections. In this regard, Yang Chen was not prepared at all. Although he knew that the other party would use the beauty trap, he thought that as long as he did not take it, it should be fine, but he did not expect the other party to use such a way. The reason for the unity of the three major sects was that these female disciples of their own have always admired Yang Chen, so they intended to be close to him. In order to fulfill the disciples' heart, the sects specially came to propose marriage. The Chunyang Palace side did not seem to expect this, and they were a little stunned. Fortunately, Yang Chen was still able to grasp it and was not stunned by the reputation of several beautiful women. After a detailed discussion with Yang Chen, the master of the palace temporarily declined the marriage proposal of the three major sects. Blue Cloud sect and Green Jade Immortal Island were very contemptuous of the three major sects' actions and also sent people to the three major sects to protest. They had seen the past, but they had never seen such a shameless person. If Chunyang Palace could not withstand the pressure or Yang Chen was fascinated by beauty, the little advantage that they had worked hard to establish before would gradually be leveled by the three major sects. How could this be? The five great sects didn't live in harmony. Everyone competed in an orderly manner. On the point of rejecting the three major sects, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect stood firmly on the side of Chunyang Palace. What a joke! What had he done earlier? Since suppressing him didn't work, he immediately switched to roping him in? Although the marriage proposal of the three great sects was declined, they were not angry. It was just that there were rumors that several fairies seemed to be sad and depressed because of this, which made many people who had tender feelings for the fairies curse Chunyang Palace and Yang Chen. How could he break the heart of a beauty like this? Was he still a man? He would rather get drunk and whip a famous horse than betray a beautiful woman. Yang Chen naturally knew that his refusal would make the admirers of many fairies rejoice and hate him at the same time. However, in this regard, Yang Chen couldn't say anything more. The more he said, the more mistakes he would make. It was better not to say anything. The 100-year pills were quickly taken away by the major sect. They were pleasantly surprised to find that in addition to the 50 100-year pills that they deserved, they also got a 1,000-year pill at the price of a 100-year pill. This was a big favor. Even if the three great sects were unhappy, they couldn't not recognize this favor. The first thing the people of the five great sects did when they returned to the sect with the 100-year pill was to ask some seniors who were in closed-door training to take a part of the 100-year pill. The reason why these seniors were in closed-door training was because their cultivation was insufficient or because they lacked confidence. Now, with the help of one or more 100-year pills, in just 1 month, there were hundreds of experts in the five great sects who had transcended the tribulation and ascended. This kind of scale directly scared many sects. Many of the first-rate sects thought that they already had a lot of experts. At least in terms of the number, they were already confident to be on an equal footing with the five great sects. They were planning to find a suitable opportunity to turn the five great sects into the 6 great sects or the seven great sects. However, when this group of experts transcended the tribulation, all the ambitious sects were scared back. On average, there were more than 20 experts in each sect who were not confident enough to transcend the tribulation and ascend. They were all experts at the peak of the Mayana realm. However, those disciples who were in closed-door training were not counted as experts with excellent qualifications and full of confidence. Thinking about the consequences if they acted blindly without thinking, countless people were covered in cold sweat. Not to mention those who were not clear about the background of the five great sect. Even Yang Chun himself was shocked. To be honest, Yang Chun himself thought that Chunyang Palace had also become a first-rate sect and was looking up to the super first-rate sect. Only now did he realize how short-sighted he was before. Even if he had the memory of being reborn for thousands of years, he was still a frog at the bottom of a well. If it weren't for the appearance of the 100-year pill, it was estimated that he wouldn't be able to discover the hidden strength of the five great sects. Those experts who had recently ascended were the disciples who had made great contributions to their respective sect. Taking the 100-year pill was probably the reward given by the sect to them. No wonder everyone knew that taking the 100-year pill was not the right way, but the sect was still so active in buying it. It turned out that this was the reason. As long as there was the 100-year pill, there was no need to worry that some disciples couldn't break through at the last moment. It was a good thing to maintain the unity of the sect and enhance the cohesion of the disciples. Yang Chun was a little annoyed now. Was it because he sold it too cheaply? After all, after this incident, wouldn't the disciples of the five great sect all strive to sacrifice themselves for the sect? If he wanted to deal with the Taishamen, it would be more and more difficult. But on second thought, this was good. On average, there were more than 20 experts who took the 100-year pill to pass the tribulation. It was estimated that they had consumed a lot of 100-year pills. Each sect had 50 100-year pills. How many would be left? This exclusive resource that he had mastered could certainly bring more benefits to himself and the Chunyang Palace. At this point, even if it was the Taishamen, they couldn't casually find a reason to do something to the Chunyang Palace. The five great sect all wanted to get all kinds of pills from Yangchun. How could the other sect tolerate the Taishamen eating alone, unless the five great sect had such thoughts at the same time? But this was estimated to be unlikely. At least the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect were very difficult to pass. Until now, the Chunyang Palace really stood among the first-class sect and could stand for thousands of years or even longer. This was the time when the Chunyang Palace was really safe. Everyone understood that the major sect could get the 100-year pill, not to mention the Chunyang Palace. In this way, many individual cultivators and monster cultivators would choose to join the sect first, which was definitely Chunyang Palace. No matter how rich the five great sect was, it was impossible for them to pay more attention to an expert who only joined them later. The 100-year pill, a precious resource, would never be easily taken out. Only the Chunyang Palace was likely to provide it in large quantities. As a result, the influence of the Chunyang Palace rose again, and it became the most dazzling star in the sect. Of course, people were more interested in the story of the 7 girls of the Chinquan sect, the Taishamen's 5 elements sect, fighting for a husband, especially when the man already had 4 beautiful wives. Chapter 11:57. Whether it was in the secular world or the world of cultivation, love seemed to be an eternal topic, especially when it involved a total of 11 beauties. Moreover, each of them came from an extraordinary background and were peerless beauties in the world, which made it even more sought after. How many male cultivators were imagining how wonderful it would be if they were Yang Chun? The beauties of the 5 major sects would all be captured in one fell swoop. How pleasant would that be? How happy would it be to be able to make people forget about home and home? All kinds of stories spread more and more, and even Yang Chun had various love entanglements with these beauties as early as hundreds of years ago. How the 4 fairies were jealous of each other, and how they united to resist the temptation of wildflowers outside their homes. The story spread more and more widely, making people not know whether to laugh or cry. On the contrary, the protagonist in the story and his four beautiful wives, after experiencing the mortal world and seeing the reincarnation of the mortal world, did not care about these stories. Instead, they regarded it as a wonderful story and listened to it with relish. Husband, why don't you take the five sisters of the five elements sect? Gao Yu even sometimes teased Yang Chun, and together with Gong Sunling, she persuaded him, lest we sisters are not your opponents at all, and we can't let you enjoy yourself completely every time. They have the same mind, maybe they can serve you more comfortably. After Yang Chun forced the four women to sleep together, the estrangement between the four women was reduced a lot, but Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were close, and Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were close. However, Gao Yu was right. Yang Chun's body was far stronger than they imagined. Even if the four women added up, sometimes they really couldn't make Yang Chun completely satisfied. After being nourished by the life essence of tens of thousands of immortals, Yang Chun's body was unreasonably strong. In addition, the yellow turban strongman body, refining technique, and immortal body, refining technique, has been cultivated to the realm of overturning the sea. Not to mention that the four women were only masters of the Yuanying stage. Even if they were four masters of the Deshang stage, they may not be the opponents of Yang Chun. Although Gao Yu's tone was obviously teasing, she didn't have such thoughts. At the very least, she didn't want her husband to only be a little satisfied every time, while they themselves were floating in the clouds countless times. If there were so many people helping, maybe it would really make Yang Chun happy. Yang Chun could only curl his lips and roll his eyes at the ridicule of his master and wife. Are you kidding me? Sun Qingxue and Shi Shanshan had gone through so many things to get together with me. Now that we are husband and wife, how happy are we? If he suddenly joined a group of strangers, it would be strange if he didn't feel awkward. Yang Chun had a lot of secrets, and Yang Chun didn't hide them from his wife. If those women joined, these secrets would definitely be known, which meant that the three major sects would know. This alone was enough to make Yang Chun retreat. Thinking about it, he knew what the purpose of these women was. Yang Chun didn't want to be surrounded by the eyes and ears of other sects. Could he do something else? Everyone was joking, but they would never be serious. As for what would be said outside, Yang Chun didn't care. What he had to do now was to stay in the sect for a period of time, continue to consolidate his cultivation, purify the ultimate demonized vine, and then refine the connection point of the two spaces. A series of masters of the five major sects had ascended, which directly set off an uproar in the entire cultivation world. If Muming Yuan had only let everyone see the effects, and the first 10 pills had only let everyone understand that they could really increase their cultivation, then the ascension of this group of experts had directly pushed the century-old pill to the top of the altar. Not only Taoism, but also the demon clan and devil sects were boiling. Countless masters began to find various ways to go deep into Taoism and come to Chunyang Palace. Everyone's purpose was the century-old pill. Of course, if they could get the questioning inner heart pill on the way, it would be the best thing. Everyone was excited, but some people were especially excited, and some people were very depressed. The most depressed one was Li Heng, the young master of Taishaman. The century-old pill's effect was so powerful that Li Heng directly saw a shortcut that could be reaped without any effort. However, the senior leaders of Taishaman certainly didn't want him to take the century-old pill. This was an unorthodox way. How could it be better than the cultivation that he had cultivated honestly? But no one recognized Li Heng's character. If there was such a shortcut, why did he have to cultivate stupidly? Everyone said it was an unorthodox way, but no one knew what the trouble was. No one had ascended to the spiritual world. Maybe this was just an excuse to make him dispel this idea. If he was unhappy that he couldn't use the century-old pill, then he was even more upset that he couldn't use the heaven and earth everlasting spirit suppression formation. Obviously, the direct increase in cultivation had such a powerful effect, but he was forced to make a heart demon oath that he couldn't use it. This made Li Heng very unhappy. When would this day come to an end? Compared with Li Heng's unhappiness, Yang Lan and Yang Lan didn't know how excited they were. The century-old pill's effect was so outstanding, which meant that the effect of the heaven and earth everlasting spirit suppression formation was equally outstanding. It also meant that one day, even if Yanglan's cultivation aptitude was not very good, she could rely on this to cross the tribulation and ascend to the spiritual world. Those masters who took the century-old pill were simply to prove to Yanglan that they could successfully cross the tribulation by relying on their cultivation without cultivating their state of mind. In particular, Mu Mingyuan of Chunyang Palace, a waste person, could actually rely on his strong cultivation to ascend directly. Could such a good thing be arranged by God for Yanglan to take revenge on Yangchen? Yangchen, this hateful guy, relying on a magic weapon that he didn't know which predecessor's primordial spirit stored, he thought that he could cover the sky with one hand, and that he could bring trouble to himself? Now that God had given Yanglan a broad road, he just had to wait for the heaven and earth everlasting spirit suppression formation to be successfully arranged. At that time, it would be time for Yangchen to pay the price. Not to mention humiliating Yangchen at that time. So what if he killed him? With the heaven and earth everlasting spirit suppression formation, the Taishamen were equivalent to having countless century-old pills, 1,000-year pills, and 10,000-year pills. They could improve their disciples' cultivation whenever they wanted. Why would they care about a little alchemist? At that time, all the sufferings and humiliations he had suffered would be returned by Yangchen 100 times and 1,000 times. He wanted to let him know that a bumpkin would always be a bumpkin and could only be stepped on by him, the Yang family's young master. Chapter 1158. What? You're going to teach the disciples of the Ishio Villa? Hearing Yangchen's words, even the head of the palace could not help but jump up. What kind of place was the Ishio Villa? It was the place where the new disciples of the Chunyang Palace stayed. Generally speaking, it was already common to have a disciple in the foundation stage to guide them. Under the reminder of Yangchen, now there were several disciples in the 9th level of the Qi refining stage who followed the guidance, and this step was already the limit. Yangchen was a Yuanying stage ancestor, but he had to go to the place where almost ordinary people gathered. The huge difference in identity could not help but surprise the head of the palace. Although Yangchen had served as a disciple of the Ishio Villa before, that was only when he was in the foundation stage. Now, it was simply a waste to send a Yuanying stage ancestor. With this time, it was better to let Yangchen refine a few furnaces of pills. This disciple has an idea that needs these new disciples to verify. Yangchen did not hide anything, but used this reason to explain to the head of the palace, if it is verified, it will greatly enhance the reputation of my Chunyang Palace. Over the years, the head of the palace had reached the peak of the Yuanying stage because of his double cultivation with Wan Qian. He could see that he could cross his tribulation and only wait for the right time. Recently, he spent time and energy in charge of the main sect. For the head of the palace, it was also equivalent to an experience. Originally, the head of the palace would not agree to this request of Yangchen, but after hearing Yangchen's explanation, he could not help but hesitate. Yangchen, the young palace master, had never lied in front of them. Everything he said seemed to have become a reality or was becoming a reality. Now that Yangchen said that it could greatly enhance the reputation of the Chunyang Palace, it would definitely be able to improve. After the head of the palace and several elders discussed it, they finally agreed to Yangchen's request. Putting everything else aside, just Yangchen's ability to guide disciples was something that no one could hope to catch up to. This had already been proven a long time ago. Among the disciples who had been guided by Yangchen in the past, the worst aptitude was now at the early Jiedan stage, and the best had already gone through the tribulation to form their nascent soul. Their cultivation was almost on par with Yangchen's middle Yuanying stage. All of this was because when they were laying the foundation, they had the guidance of Yangchen, the master-level teacher. Now that Yangchen had returned to Ishio Manor, many people who knew about the past were envious of this new batch of disciples. However, envy was envy. This was a blessing that could not be forced. When Yangchen came to guide the new disciples, he would only give them some pointers at the crucial moment. As for enlightenment, there was no need for him to do anything at all. When all the new disciples saw Yang Chun, they now had to pay their respects to the martial uncle. It was too simple for Yang Chun to do. It was simply an insult to him. The reason why he came to the Isshio Manor was that Yang Chun calculated the time and decided to make the matter of the acquired spirit root public. If this matter was not made public, he believed that in less than 100 years, the Taishaman would also make this public. Instead of letting the Taishaman be good people to improve their reputation, it was better to let Yang Chun and Chunyang Palace get this benefit. In the cultivation world, there were also researchers who were similar to scientists. Their interest was not in fighting, but in studying various ways of cultivation. Basically, every sect had such a hall, and even Chunyang Palace was no exception. Most of the results of these researchers would be protected as secrets of the sect, but there were also many times when these research results would choose to be made public. On the one hand, it was to enhance the influence and reputation of the sect. On the other hand, it was also to promote all the sect to follow its own research direction, similar to various modern industrial standards. The sect that mastered this kind of standard naturally had an advantage over other sects in a certain direction. Strictly speaking, it was part of the comprehensive strength of the sect. The reason why the Taishaman became the largest Taoism sect was not only because of the powerful armed forces of the sect, but also because of the contribution of this kind of researchers. Basically, many things in the cultivation world were provided by the Taishaman. In his previous life, the Taishaman announced the discovery of the acquired spirit root, and their influence went to a higher level. They completely established the name of the largest Taoism sect, and the other sect no longer had the influence to compete with the Taishaman. In this life, Yang Chun naturally would not let the Taishaman get this position. Naturally, it was impossible for Yang Chun to come up with this result after just a few days in Yeshio Villa. Naturally, he would stay in Yeshio Villa for several years, or even decades before he announced the discovery of the acquired spirit root. Therefore, the people who joined Chunyang Palace in these years were really blessed. This kind of advantage accumulated at the beginning was definitely a pleasant surprise. Basically, just like in Yeshio Villa, Yang Chun would generally give advice every few months, and everyone could take turns to do it. Now, the number of new disciples in Chunyang Palace was dozens of times more than in the past, so naturally, it would take more time. However, for Yang Chun, giving advice to a few juniors at the first level of the Qi refining realm was absolutely a piece of cake. Every time he gave advice, it was to the point, which made the disciples who received the advice overjoyed. The century-old pill was still spreading like wildfire. Wanbao Tower would auction 5 pills every year in its own auction house. Relying on the appearance pill and the century-old pill, Wanbao Tower had already vaguely become the #1 business in the world. Coupled with the special products of the Demon Tribe and the South Sea, even the business of the Taishaman couldn't compete with Wanbao Tower. The romantic affairs between the beauties of the 3 sects and Yang Chun were still spread by word of mouth among the cultivators. At this time, it was best for Yang Chun to ignore them and let the trend cool down slowly. Otherwise, it would become more and more difficult to deal with. Coming to Yeshio Villa to give advice to the new disciples, Yang Chun also had the intention to avoid the limelight for a while. As long as he didn't show up, people would not have the target of the rumors, and the limelight would gradually decrease. The 5 sects unanimously chose to buy the prescription of the century-old pill. Of course, the Danding School, which had always been proud of refining pills, was no exception. Now, among the recognized masters of alchemy in the cultivation world, Yang Chun ranked first. Several masters of the Danding School followed Yang Chun respectively. As for the masters of the 5 sects' medicinal halls, it seemed that they were ranked even lower. For the prescription of a century-old pill, Yang Chun offered a price of 2 kinds of 7th-grade fire seeds, which was the same level as the questioning inner heart pill. In this regard, whether it was the 5 sects or the Danding School, no one bargained. They seemed to think that this price was reasonable. Of course, 7th-grade fire seeds were not so easy to find. There were only a few kinds of 7th-grade fire seeds in the world, and Yang Chun had about half of them in his hands. In the end, several sects basically paid with materials of equal value. Chapter 1159. The Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect got the internal price because of the relationship between Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. So they got the internal price, and the external price was 20% off. Just this price alone was enough to make the two sects explode with joy. The most unhappy ones were actually the Taishamen, because of a need to arrange the universe everlasting spirit suppression great formation. Even the rich Taishamen couldn't help but feel a little stretched. Fortunately, the Taishamen had a deep foundation, and there was still a batch of elixirs that had been inherited for more than 100,000 years, which was barely offset. Yang Chun received a total of 4 kinds of 7th-grade fire seeds this time, and the rest were all kinds of top medicinal materials and top refining materials. As for the finished magic weapons and medicinal pills, Yang Chun almost didn't want any of them, because when he left the Demon Continent, he made a great heart oath not to disclose the true situation in the Demon Continent. Therefore, on Yang Chen's pill recipe, there were only the names and weights of various auxiliary medicinal materials, and the name of the main material, the devilish bead, did not even appear. However, Yang Chen also specifically mentioned that the name of the main material could not be said because there was an oath, but as long as the major sects sent people to the Demon Continent, they could recognize what it was. On this point, Yang Chen promised by the Great Heart Oath, and the sect also accepted this statement. Every sect had masters who had been to the Demon Continent to gain experience. As soon as the devilish bead was described, those disciples immediately understood what it was. What made all the sect feel strange was that everyone knew what it was, but no one said it. It had to be said that this was a strange phenomenon. In fact, when the news of Mu Mingyuan's ascension spread, those masters who had been experienced in the Demon Continent knew what it was, but they didn't expect it to be so big and pure gold. They all thought that Yang Chun was deliberately mystifying, but in fact, it was to let Mu Mingyuan take a huge risk of his life. But after 100 years in the hands of the sect, those people thoroughly understood that this was the devilish bead that had been purified completely. It was just that no one knew how to purify it, and how to evenly distribute the medicinal properties of the demonic baleful bead at the stage of 100 years of cultivation. Other things were not rare. Even so, the importance of the 100-year pill made all the major sects pay attention to it. Soon, they organized people to go to the Demon Continent, specifically to obtain the demonic pearl for alchemy. In this regard, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect once again walked in front of several other sects. With the pocket money given by Yang Chun, Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue were also rare rich women on the Demon Continent, and there were many demonic beads. Of course, Yang Chun would not charge them any fees for purifying the demonic baleful bead. This batch of low-grade, devilish beads directly entered the medicinal hall of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the sect for those alchemy masters to refine century-old pills. The refining of the 100-year pill was not as complicated as the questioning inner heart pill. As long as one was a 4th-grade alchemist, they would be competent. Soon, the two sects' refinement was successful. When the news came out, it immediately stimulated other sects. However, no matter how exciting it was, there was no way. Even if the other sect had the demonic bead, it was not a purified demonic bead and could not be directly refined. Without it, it would take a long time to wait. It would take decades to go back and forth to the Demon Continent, not to mention the time to obtain the demonic bead. Therefore, several sects that had the demonic bead had to send people again to discuss the way to purchase and purify the demonic bead. But this time, Yang Chun said that he would not sell anything. The method announced to the outside world was that Yang Chun had a magic weapon that could purify the demonic bead, and he himself had no way to do it. This kind of thing could not be bought by any sect. Yang Chun would certainly not sell this magic weapon, but he agreed to give them the demonic bead to purify. Several sects had to gnash their teeth and take out an additional sum of spirit stones again in exchange for Yang Chen's purification of the demonic bead. In this way, some of the guys who vaguely guessed the core inside story of the Demon Continent seemed to understand why Yang Chun took the initiative to take his 4 wives to the Demon Continent 200 years ago. With such a magic weapon in hand, wouldn't it be a pity not to go? During this time, Yang Chun did not go out and stayed in the sect, but Yang Chen's 4 wives had their own actions. Sun Qingxue followed her master, Elder Hua, to cultivate hard, and the Blue Cloud sect had basically spread. The disciples who were willing to work so hard and inherited their master's mantle, and their cultivation methods were exactly the same, which was also a good story. Shi Shanshan continued her own cultivation, went out from time to time, and completed some tasks of the sect. The people who knew the Cold Plum Fairy all discovered that she was becoming more and more calm and reserved, but that fierce aura of hers had only increased. Even if they didn't know the storm, when Shi Shanshan had just returned to the Green Jade Immortal Island from the Demon Continent, everyone also understood that Shi Shanshan's cultivation base was becoming more and more refined. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were working nonstop for the sect, and most of the time they were traveling outside. Both women now had powerful means, and basically there were no twists and turns, and they all completed the tasks of the sect one by one. Yang Chun quietly stayed in the Ishio Villa to guide the new disciples, and it could almost be described as not going out. In the blink of an eye, 20 years passed in a flash. In the past 20 years, except for the guidance every few months, Yang Chun has been purifying the demonic energy of the ultimate demonized vine. As the 9 nether flying sword became more and more powerful, Yang Chun's strength slowly increased, and the speed of absorbing the demonic energy became faster and faster. Finally, in the 18th year, Yang Chun absorbed all the demonic energy in the body of the ultimate demonized vine. This ultimate demonized vine of the 2nd grade of the Earth Immortal was enough for Sun Qingxue to cultivate for the next few hundred years. As long as she could absorb and refine this demonized vine, Sun Qingxue could be strong in the spiritual world for a long time. In the next 2 years, Yang Chun was constantly refining the space point of the demon continent with the cultivation method obtained by the Heart Demon sect. It must be said that this speculative cultivation method obtained in the Heart Demon sect was the biggest gain of Yang Chun in the demon continent. Basically, so far, all the guesses were completely correct. However, if Yang Chun wanted to completely refine that space point, it would not be completed in a few decades or 100 years. This was a very time-consuming work. With Yang Chun's current spiritual awareness of the 7th grade of the human immortal, he could multitask and refine it at any time. In the 20th year, Yang Chun calculated that it was about time and finally left the Ishio Villa. Soon after, Chunyang Palace began to announce to the public that the secret of the acquired spiritual root had been discovered, and it was made public to the sect. As soon as the news came out, it caused a frenzy in the entire cultivation world. Chapter 1160. Acquired spiritual root, what was that? Everyone who heard the news was dumbfounded. As the name suggested, since it was called acquired spiritual root, it must be corresponding to the innate spiritual root. It should be easy to understand the innate spiritual root. Innate spiritual root. Then could it be that the acquired spiritual root could be changed? This was the reaction in the minds of people who heard the word for the first time. Could it be that in addition to the innate spiritual root, there were other spiritual roots? This was a big event in the cultivation world. Not everyone had good qualifications like Shi Shanshan and Sun Qingxue. Most people had some kind of 5 elements spiritual root that was relatively outstanding. Many people's cultivation was limited, and most of the reasons were because of insufficient qualifications. Now, that a kind of acquired spiritual root had suddenly appeared didn't it mean that if one also had an acquired spiritual root, they might have a chance to come into contact with the Great Way? It was said that this was accidentally discovered by Master Yang Chun, the alchemy master of Chunyang Palace, a long time ago. In order to verify it, he even observed and experimented with the new disciples of Chunyang Palace for hundreds of years. Especially in the last 20 years, Master Yang almost always observed the new disciples, and only then was he sure. The acquired spiritual root was also of the 5 elements, and this time, Master Yang also announced the method to test for the acquired spiritual root. If everyone had the conditions, they could take a simple test to determine whether they had acquired spiritual root. Like the innate spiritual root the acquired spiritual root did not necessarily appear at any time. Therefore, it did not mean that it would not appear in the future. In short, the emergence of the acquired spiritual root also provided a new hope for many people. The first action of all the people who were interested in this was to test their acquired spiritual root according to the method announced by Chunyang Palace. The test for the acquired spiritual root was relatively simple. It only needed to use a unique multicolored stone. If one could not find it in a short time, they could go to Wanbao Tower. Wanbao Tower had already started to operate this kind of multicolored stone business. Many people who did not believe it saw with their own eyes that the multicolored stone showed a result different from their own spiritual root after they took the test. For a moment, he was so shocked that he didn't know what to say. Some people immediately remembered that a long time ago, Yang Chun urged his master Gao Yu to change from fire to water attribute cultivation method. Up to now, Gao Yu could be regarded as a water and fire cultivator, and her cultivation base was already in the middle yuanying stage. Could it be that from then on, Yang Chun had already discovered the existence of the acquired spiritual root? This possibility existed. If one counted the time when Yang Chun was still in the foundation establishment stage, he had forcefully ordered some of the disciples of Yishio Manor to practice a cultivation method with a different attribute from his own innate spirit root. It could be said that Yang Chun had begun his research in this area a long time ago. All the sect's disciples verified it one after another. As expected, they easily discovered that many of their disciples had different acquired spiritual roots. However, some acquired spiritual roots were better than innate spiritual roots, while some were far inferior to innate spiritual roots. This situation had long been explained in the information released by Yang Chun. However, it was only found that some people had a situation in line with Yang Chun's announcement, but it did not prove that people with acquired spiritual roots were better than those with innate spiritual roots. According to the attributes of the acquired spiritual roots, they could have a better future. This was not something that could be decided immediately. At least it would take a long time to verify. But from the current situation, Master Yang Chun didn't seem to have said anything false. If he usually said this, it basically meant that there would be no big changes. At least the high-level members of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect have already believed this statement. As for Chunyang Palace, with the example of Gao Yu, who would not believe it, the strength of support for believing and not believing was completely different. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect directly purchased a large number of 5-colored stones and tested them one by one. Each test showed a different disciple. If the acquired spiritual root was better than the innate spiritual root, it was recommended to recultivate immediately. Among them, there were some disciples who were originally judged to have poor qualifications and reluctantly joined the sect. Suddenly, they found that the excellence of the acquired spiritual roots was stunning. This group of disciples was immediately gathered together, and then the sect attached great importance to them. The resources were fully tilted, and they immediately cultivated a new attribute. In just half a year, it was enough for many people to discover the differences in the cultivation of different attributes. It was also directly proved that the matter of the acquired spiritual roots mentioned by Yang Chun was indeed not a lie. Those cultivators below the yuanying stage directly chose to change their cultivation attributes. As for the masters above the yuanying stage, it was up to them to choose. Perhaps it would take a long time to recultivate, but it was related to better development in the future. At least they would have a headache for a long time. Countless words of praise were directly sent to Chunyang Palace and sent to the ears of Yang Chun. This was a great thing that would benefit all cultivators. It would allow every cultivator who was determined to cultivate to have a different choice. Even those who hadn't discovered the acquired spirit root would hold it in high esteem. If the amazing combat power was regarded as a special soldier in cultivation, then the person who released the research results of the acquired spiritual roots was simply a Nobel Prize winner in the academic world. At least, he was an academic big shot like a doctoral supervisor. Yang Chen's master title, there was one more. This time, it wasn't the word Great Master that was prefixed, but the word Great Master that was directly used. In the past, when people called Master Yang, it actually meant that he was a master of alchemy. But now, when people called Master Yang, it was a pure master without any hidden attribution. In just 1 year, almost all the sect had added the acquired spiritual roots test when testing new disciples. And the multicolored stone of Wanbao Tower was sold out from the beginning. Because of the emergence of the acquired spiritual roots, the whole cultivation world was almost refreshed. For many years, there had not been such research results related to the origin of cultivation. The discovery of Yangchun was simply a great event. What else has this Yangchun not discovered? Such voices filled all the sect. Everyone was envious, jealous, and hateful of this disciple of Chunyang Palace. Why was such an excellent disciple not their own disciple? The influence of Chunyang Palace, because of this matter, had been directly raised to a new level. The acquired spiritual roots were not only good for the Taoist sects, but also for all cultivators. Whether it was the disciples of the demon clan or the devil clan, it was suitable. Just this alone, even if the demonic sects were deviant, they would have more incense for the pure Yang Palace. Chapter 1161. All the members of the sect were overjoyed, not for anything else, but because the discovery of the acquired spiritual root allowed them to find many good seedlings for cultivation, and the strength of the sect would gradually improve, which was naturally a good thing. But the only one who was not happy was the Taishaman. Originally, some people in the Taishaman had discovered this phenomenon by chance 100 years ago, but they had not been able to find the right way. So the research in this area had not been in-depth, but they did not expect that Yangchun would be the first to do so. Strictly speaking, the Taishaman were not wronged. From the beginning, when Yangchun asked Gao Yu to change to the water attribute cultivation method, it showed that Yangchun had already discovered the signs. The Taishaman only discovered it 100 years ago, so they were naturally behind Yangchun. The main reason for their unhappiness was that Yangchun, a disciple, should have been a Taishaman, but he was kicked out by some arrogant guy, which helped the Chunyang Palace. Every time, Yangchun's major achievements seemed to be a heavy layer of flesh and blood on the scar of the Taishaman's high-level officials, so that they could relive the taste of depression. It had to be said that it was very uncomfortable. All the disciples on duty who were responsible for accepting new disciples were all reprimanded by the high-level officials again. It was really a mistake that caused everlasting sorrow. Things that had happened for hundreds of years were picked up every once in a while to beat and teach them a lesson. These disciples were so depressed that they wanted to commit suicide. Was there anything more painful than this? Since the first time these disciples were punished, every time the Taishaman came to accept new disciples, those disciples on duty were careful and did not dare to drive out a newcomer who had not seen the world casually. They were afraid that if they accidentally threw out a certain Li Chun or Wang Chun, they would be whipped because of this matter. The attitude of the Taishaman in accepting new disciples had become a model of Taoism. Now Yangchun's position in the cultivation world was unbreakable. Not to mention that he was the only fifth-grade alchemist in the mortal world. Just the discovery of the acquired spiritual root alone was enough to make almost all the cultivators feel indebted. If one wanted to deal with Yangchun, not to mention those who needed Yangchun's help, even if it was a stranger, no one would be able to say anything against it. The appearance of the acquired spiritual root seemed to have strengthened the determination of the three great sect to rope in Yangchun. In addition to the Taishaman, the five-element sect and the Qingquan sect spared no effort to contact the Chunyang Palace in all aspects in order to let Yangchun accept their female disciples. Only by becoming the son-in-law of his own sect would he be able to calm down a little. Now was not the time to casually destroy a future genius, at least not when it came to Yangchun. Since that was the case, it was better to rope them in than to create enmity. This was something that anyone with a normal mind could think of. You found out that time, when Gao Yu faced Yangchun, she couldn't help but be surprised. Then why didn't you explain it clearly? Why did you have to use a bet to let me practice the water attribute cultivation method? The research was not thorough enough. How dare I talk nonsense? Yangchun couldn't help but cry out, but he also couldn't help but smile. At this time, Gao Yu recalled Yangchun's insistence. In order to let her change to the water attribute cultivation method, he even used to kill Lin Chong and the old devil as a bet. If there was an accident at that time, Gaoyu didn't dare to think about it. However, the more risky Yang Chun was, the more it seemed to show the importance of Gaoyu in his mind. Thinking of this, Gaoyu couldn't help but feel sweet in her heart, full of the joy of being cared for. Chunyang Palace, from the head of the palace, all the high-level members did not have a smile on their faces for more than a year, and they always had a jubilant look. It had to be said that Yang Chun, this disciple, was really too powerful. Since he was recruited to join the sect, he had almost never let the sect worry about him. Instead, because of Yang Chun, the sect got a lot of benefits again and again. With the gradual improvement of strength, the sect grew stronger, and even the influence was now higher. How could these high-level members not be happy? What are you going to do next? The head of the palace was now concerned about Yang Chen's next plan. Since the acquired spirit root had come to an end, presumably Yang Chun would have new plans. For the time being, this disciple has no new plans. Yang Chun replied truthfully. Now there's really nothing for Yang Chun to be busy with. In his memory, there would be no major events in the next period of time. It was just the right time to send the ultimate demonized demon vine to Sun Qingxue, and then accompany Shi Shanshan to take a trip. The rest was to wait for the Taishaman's universe everlasting spirit suppression formation to be launched. This disciple is ashamed. Suddenly, Yang Chun remembered one thing. In the past, he got the treasure of the Chunyang Palace, the 7th grade fire seed, pure Yang true fire. It was said that it would be preserved for 300 years. Now it had expired, and he had not absorbed it, nor had he returned it. Speaking of which, this was Yang Chen's own mistake. The palace master promised that this disciple could keep the pure Yang true fire for 300 years. This disciple is dull and has not used it yet. It is better to return it to the sect first. As he said this, Yang Chun hurriedly took out the fire seed of the pure Yang true fire and respectfully sent it to the hands of the palace master. In the eyes of the palace master, this was not a big deal. Yang Chun was now the young palace master. There was no difference between keeping it in the hands of Yang Chun and the hands of the palace master. At least no one at the top of the Chunyang Palace would have an opinion. However, since Yang Chun said so, it did not matter to the palace master to take it back. Anyway, when Yang Chun wanted it, he could take it at any time. It was just a little effort. There was no need to sing a different tune with Yang Chun because of this. If that's the case, then this old man will take it back. The palace master put away the fire seed and then exhorted, "If you need it in the future, come to this old man at any time." Thank you for the palace master's understanding. Yang Chun thanked him very politely. This was the kindness of the elders, and he certainly would not refuse it. But then again, it seems that the sect does owe you a lot of things. The palace master suddenly said, "You made a great contribution in the past. The sect allowed you to enter the secret pavilion at any time to see what good things you needed, but you never went in. Anyway, you have nothing to do, you can go in and see." This was the reward that Yang Chun received for his continuous contributions in the past. Yang Chun naturally did not forget it. However, he did not think that he could find anything in the secret pavilion of the Chunyang Palace. It seemed that except for the fire seed of the pure Yang true fire of the 7th grade, there was nothing that could move Yang Chun. With Yang Chen's current net worth, how could it be easy to look at the property that the ancestors of the Chunyang Palace had worked hard to accumulate? However, since it was the kindness of the elders, Yang Chun would naturally not disobey. In his previous life, Yang Chun did not have the opportunity to enter the secret pavilion. He had never been qualified. This time, he could go in and open his eyes to make up for the regret of his previous life. Chapter 1162. The secret pavilion of Chunyang Palace was not very special. It was also an independent space. The space was not large. It was about the same size as the secret plane where Yang Chun found the praying mantis. However, even so, it was still dozens of miles in radius. When Yang Chun came in, it seemed empty. There were no living things in the secret pavilion, just a small mountain. What's more, there was not even a house. At first, Yang Chun didn't know where to look for suitable things. His spiritual awareness began to explore subconsciously, and soon Yang Chun had to smile bitterly. I don't know if the ancestors of the pure Yang Palace were lazy, or if they intended to test the disciples' luck. The good things in the secret pavilion were scattered in various places. The disciples who entered the secret pavilion basically had to play a treasure hunting game. Yang Chun guessed that Chunyang Palace was still too poor at that time. If there were not many masters, it was not realistic to build a set of beautiful houses in the secret pavilion. So, it had been left to the present. If there was a chance in the future, he still had to build the secret pavilion of the sect well. In the secret pavilion, most of the spiritual awareness was blocked, but for Yang Chun, this degree of spiritual awareness shielding could not affect much. At least under the exploration of Yang Chun's spiritual awareness, at least a quarter of the land could be clearly known. Speaking of it, the ancestors of Chunyang Palace were not a rich sect. Except for the ancestors, there were no decent masters. Therefore, although the things in the secret pavilion were good things in the previous Chunyang Palace, there was almost nothing that could make Yang Chun look at it. Yang Chun easily found the fire seed of pure yang, true fire again. The 7th grade fire seed was not carefully placed, as if it was thrown in at will. This fire seed had just been returned by Yang Chun. At present, he could only absorb the 5th grade fire seed. There was no way to move the 7th grade fire seed. Therefore, Yang Chun would not have any ideas about the 7th grade fire seed. He just put it away casually and then continued to look for other good things. It could be seen that most of the good things were added in the past few hundred years. There were several magic weapons that looked very good. Yang Chun could also find traces of refining from them. In addition, there were a lot of good flying sword. Yang Chun remembered that it seemed that he got it from the secret plane of Taishaman. A part of it was handed over to the sect, and now it has become a reward in the secret pavilion. Since he had already entered the secret pavilion, his own sect, Yang Chun did not mind helping the sect. The magic weapons that he saw were all erased by Shao Tian from all the refiner's aura on the magic weapons and became clean. In the future, if there were disciples of Chunyang Palace who entered the secret pavilion and got these magic weapons, because of Yang Chun's efforts, they could save at least a few decades of hard work. Anyway, the benefits were obtained by the disciples of his own sect. The meat was rotten in the pot. This kind of effort was easy for Yang Chun to do. After walking for a while, Yang Chun found the trace of the questioning inner heart pill and also the 100-year pill. These two kinds of medicinal pills, even in the Chunyang Palace, were regarded as the treasures of the palace. Only by making enough contributions to the sect could they have the opportunity to enter the secret pavilion and find suitable magic weapons or medicinal pills for themselves. This was the reward measure of the sect. Of course, Yang Chun would not say anything about it. However, so far, Yang Chun has not found what he needs. Whether it was medicinal pills or magic weapons, it was not what Yang Chun was interested in. Speaking of it, most of the things in this secret pavilion were now related to Yang Chun. Whether Yang Chun could enter the secret pavilion or not, whether he could find things or not, it seemed that there was not much impact on Yang Chun. However, soon Yang Chun found something different. It was more than a dozen jade slips. The jade slips that could be placed in the secret pavilion by the ancestors of the sect were naturally not ordinary. Yang Chun immediately became spirited and quickly rushed to the side of the first jade slip. Sure enough, as Yang Chun expected, this jade slip was a very profound cultivation method. It seemed that at least the Deshang stage could be cultivated. Water attribute cultivation method. Yang Chun shook his head with slight regret. The cultivation method did not have much meaning for Yang Chun. No matter how powerful the cultivation method was, it was not as good as the original cultivation method. That was, Yang Chun could be allowed to find what he liked in the secret pavilion at will. If it was replaced by anyone else, after coming in and touching the first thing, they would be involuntarily sent out of the secret pavilion. If it was a magic weapon or medicinal pill, it could be taken away, but if it was something like a jade slip, it could only be returned after consulting. Throwing away the jade slip in his hand, Yang Chun came to the location of the next jade slip. When his spiritual awareness explored it, he suddenly became spirited. On this jade slip, the ancestral master had personally recorded his fire attribute cultivation experience. The part about the fire was recorded in great detail, especially for the control of pure yang true fire. It was a very insightful view. Yang Chun was overjoyed, even if he had tens of thousands of years of fire control experience in his previous life. But this part of the ancestors special for pure yang true fire was also an extremely precious thing for Yang Chun. Under the great joy, Yang Chun sat down on the spot and began to slowly review the experience. Comparing it with his own understanding, he sat for more than 10 days. It couldn't be helped but be said that those who could establish their own sect were definitely geniuses among geniuses. The fire control experience left by the ancestor, even for Yang Chun, was a very useful supplement. Just looking at the records for a long time, Yang Chun felt that his ability to control fire seemed to have improved. In a secret pavilion, of course, Yang Chun could not easily experiment, but these things of the ancestor were firmly remembered in his mind. Don't look at the experience left before the ascension. It was enough for Yang Chun to collect pure yang true fire at the right time. Just this piece of jade slip was already worth Yang Chun entering this secret pavilion. With this harvest, Yang Chun naturally would not let go of other jade slips and began to look at them one by one. Some jade slips that recorded advanced cultivation methods. Yang Chun basically skimmed over them first. There was a piece of jade slip that recorded several unique pill recipes. Yang Chun paid special attention to it. The pill recipe was not a complicated pill recipe. For Yang Chun, it basically belonged to the kind with no difficulty, but these pill recipes seemed to have very precious raw materials. After the success of refining, there was also a very significant feature: expensive. Moreover, these pill recipes seemed to have a better effect on mortals than on cultivators. But Yang Chun attached great importance to it, not for anything else, but one of these pill recipes was called longevity pill. So far, Yang Chun had never heard of this kind of longevity pill in the immortal world except for the Taishang Laojun and the South Pole Immortal one. Chapter 1163. Although the lifespan of the cultivators has increased greatly after cultivation, it is not without restrictions. The cultivators will also grow old, and their lifespan will be exhausted. If they can't make a significant breakthrough in their cultivation base, they will be trapped in a realm and unable to improve and eventually die. It could greatly increase the lifespan of mortals. In fact, it was very easy to do. Many things could effectively improve the physique of mortals. When the physique was improved, the lifespan would naturally increase. It was very simple to extend life. For cultivators, it was not so easy. The physique of the cultivators itself had been greatly improved. It was not easy to do this simply by relying on medicinal pills. It was just like being unable to directly improve one's cultivation base. It was very difficult. However, the longevity pill on the jade slip did not simply rely on this method to increase one's lifespan. Of course, there was this reason, so the effect was very good for mortals. But there was such a small part that was still different. Even for cultivators, it was also useful, but the effect was not as obvious as for mortals. Who is Yang Chun? The only 5th grade alchemy grandmaster in the mortal world. With the insight of the great principal golden immortal, he naturally discovered the specialties at a glance. Speaking of which, the uniqueness of this kind of longevity pill was to supplement people's lifespan in a way similar to supplementing life essence. It was purely to supplement people's lifespan. There was no other effect. It would not deepen the cultivation base. It would not stimulate the potential in advance. It was simply to supplement life. The relationship between the various medicinal materials on the pill recipe was very harmonious. It was obviously the work of an expert. The technique of alchemy was gentle and belonged to the most orthodox kind that would not have any side effects. If it was purely based on the alchemy technique, as long as there was a 4th grade alchemy master, it could completely meet the needs. However, if it was just a 4th grade alchemy master, he would not be able to refine the longevity pill even if he was beaten to death. This kind of longevity pill had a very harsh condition. That was, when refining, it required 2 specific 7th grade fire seeds. Pure yang true fire pure true fire. These two 7th-grade fire seeds were the necessary fire seeds to refine the longevity pill. As long as you have these two kinds of fire seeds, as long as you reach the level of a 4th-grade alchemy master, as long as there are enough medicinal materials, you can refine the longevity pill. Seeing this condition, Yang Chun finally knew why the elixir recipe of the prolonging life pill was in the secret chamber of Chunyang Palace. It seemed that in addition to those wildfire seeds that no one knew where else existed, the pure Yang true fire could only be found in the treasures left by the ancestors of the Chunyang Palace. Other sect wouldn't be able to find such a precious fire seed, even if they wanted to. Just one kind of pure Yang true fire was already so difficult to find, not to mention another kind of pure true fire that was directly comparable to pure Yang true fire. The power of the two types of true fire was exactly the same, but one was yin and the other was yang. When refining pills, yin and yang had to complement each other in order to succeed. Under such harsh conditions, even if a rich and imposing sect like the Taishaman's Danding sect could find a fire seed, there was almost no one who could control two kinds of fire seeds at the same time. A 7th-grade fire seed was enough to make people dominate the world, not to mention two at the same time. Yang Chen thought about it, and he couldn't think of anyone who could use two 7th-grade fire seeds at the same time, except for himself. With this idea, Yang Chen suddenly felt a little guilty. Perhaps Li Cheng could also do it. The pure Yang true fire was in this secret chamber, but the pure Yin true fire had never been heard of anywhere. Even if Yang Chen had obtained a lot of 7th-grade fire seeds from the major sect, there was no trace of the pure Yin true fire. It seemed that he could use the pure Yin true fire as a target to look for. The principle recorded in the elixir recipe of this kind of prolonging life pill was already understood by Yang Chen, but the effect of the elixir was not good for cultivators. Yang Chen was very confident that on the basis of this elixir, he could research the real prolonging life pill that could greatly increase the lifespan of cultivators. This was not the same as the 100-year pill that directly improved the cultivation base, but simply increased the lifespan. After taking the 100-year pill, it was possible to increase the lifespan by breaking through, but in order to resolve the side effects of the 100-year pill, it would take a longer time. However, it was different to simply increase the lifespan. Although the time of breakthrough would be delayed, everything was obtained by one's own cultivation, so naturally it could not be compared. There was no direct side effect of improving the cultivation base. For those who were approaching the end of their lifespan and could not break through, it was simply a perfect life-saving medicine, even better than the 100-year pill. Since Yang Chen chose to be an alchemist as his identity in this life, Yang Chen certainly had to conduct in-depth research on the path of alchemy. It was definitely not enough to rely on his past achievements. With the level of Yang Chen's previous life, he was at most a 6th-grade alchemist master. Basically, it was not surprising when he arrived in the spiritual world. And the only way to improve his level of alchemy was to study and create his own elixir. Just as you can never become a real scholar by following the textbook, you always have to overcome a difficult topic to be recognized as a master. Coming to the secret chamber, he found such a good thing, a good topic. Yang Chen was naturally overjoyed. The experience of the ancestor, coupled with the elixir recipe of this prolonging life pill, was enough to make Yang Chen's trip worthwhile. But surprises always came inadvertently. An ancient jade slip, he didn't know how long it had been kept. When Yang Chen picked it up and looked at it casually, he jumped up and was surprised. What was recorded on this jade slip turned out to be the 3rd fire true secret art that Yang Chen couldn't find. Great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art. Now only the 3rd fire true secret art has not been found. Unexpectedly, it appeared in front of his eyes inadvertently. How could it not make Yang Chen ecstatic? How could there be such a 3rd fire true secret art in the secret chamber of Chunyang Palace? Yang Chen couldn't think of it even if he broke his head. But what was recorded on the jade slip in front of him was not the fake 3rd fire true secret art. Yang Chen saw it from beginning to end. With his knowledge, he could immediately distinguish the authenticity. This was the real 3rd fire true secret art. How is this possible? It was not an exaggeration at all to say that one could wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching only to find it effortlessly. Was there anything more dramatic than this? If he knew that there was a third fire true secret art in the secret chamber of Chunyang Palace, why would Yang Chun have to go around looking for it, racking his brains to search for memories in his mind? Yang Chun almost couldn't wait to remember the third fire true secret art firmly in his mind. The huge surprise made Yang Chun lose his temper. Fortunately, it was in the secret chamber, and he was alone. Otherwise, if it was seen by others, it would definitely be a joke for Yang Chun for many years. Blessings were unparalleled. Today, Yang Chun's face was already full of joy. After going out, he must ask the head of the palace which ancestor passed down this third fire true secret art. How could he offer a few sticks of incense to thank the ancestor? Chapter 1164. You asked where this third fire true secret art came from. The head of the palace looked at Yang Chun in front of him and looked at him with a very strange look. In fact, this is also related to you. When Yang Chun came out of the secret pavilion, he asked about the third fire true secret art, which made the head of the palace a little stunned. However, he did not hide it, but directly began to explain to Yang Chun. Related to me? Yang Chun frowned. He thought about it. He couldn't remember when he got the third fire true secret art, and he also handed it over to the head of the palace. However, since the palace master said so, it would not be a fake, so he continued to listen. The master of the Luo family, Luo Yuan, didn't he chase you? The head of the palace first mentioned Luo Yuan, and then talked about the whole incident. Many years ago, when Yang Chun and Sun Qingxue went out to experience together, they once took Sun Qingxue into the secret plane. In addition to getting a lot of praying mantis puppets, the other biggest gain was the third fire true essence. Coming out of the secret plane, Yang Chun and Sun Qingxue were chased by Luo Yuan, a master of the late Deshang stage. At that time, Yang Chun relied on the high speed of the shuttle to send Sun Qingxue back to Blue Cloud Sect, and with Luo Yuan began to fly a kite on the vast sea. In the end, with the help of the big octopus, Lan Ning, Luo Yuan was killed. At that time, the reason why Luo Yuan chased Yang Chun was to get the third fire true essence. After Luo Yuan's death, Yang Chun also searched Luo Yuan's body, but did not find any whereabouts of the third fire true secret art. At that time, it was left unsettled. However, Chunyang Palace had just improved their strength at that time. They couldn't bear to see someone have evil thoughts on their own genius disciple, so they directly sent people to destroy the Luo family. The treasures accumulated by the Luo family over the years naturally belonged to Chunyang Palace. Among them was this piece of third fire true secret art jade slip. Because it was the original cultivation method, the palace master put the third fire true secret art in the secret pavilion for meritorious disciples to cultivate. However, the conditions for practicing the third fire true secret art were harsh. One must have the third fire true essence, so no one had chosen it until Yang Chun asked. Yang Chun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, he felt lucky. At that time, the third fire true secret art could not be found on Luo Yuan, and the Luo family kept this thing in the family. Fortunately, there was Luo Yuan in the past. Otherwise, Yang Chun did not know where to find the third fire true secret art. For others, it is difficult to cultivate the third fire true secret art because there is no third fire true essence. But for Yang Chun, there was no problem. The third fire true essence had already been prepared. Everything was ready. Only the east wind was missing. Now that the third fire true secret art was also in hand, Yang Chun couldn't wait to complete the Great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art. Gathering the Great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art. This was a complete wish of Yang Chun after his rebirth, and success was imminent. Yang Chun didn't even have the leisure to talk more with the palace master. After understanding the reason, he immediately left, returned to his own small courtyard, went into the Dragon Palace, and began to retreat. For the first time, the palace master saw Yang Chun so anxious. It seemed that such a situation only happened after Gao Yu was seriously injured last time. However, Yang Chun was a fire attribute, innate spirit root, and it was no wonder that he found the third fire true secret art. It was inevitable that he would be excited, but he did not have too much guilt. After Yang Chun went back, he sat in the Dragon Palace for at least half a day. Then he suppressed his excitement and began to practice according to the third fire true secret art. Yang Chun has already cultivated 9 kinds of original cultivation methods, and his experience was so rich that no one could match it. The last kind of third fire true secret art, Yang Chun's innate spirit root attribute, coupled with the understanding of the fire attribute in his previous life, the cultivation was simply a piece of cake. In just 4 months, the third fire true secret art in Yang Chun's body was completely transformed into the third fire true essence and began to flow in the body. As soon as the third fire true secret art was successfully cultivated, it directly caused a chain reaction. The great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art was finally formed, and the 10 kinds of spiritual power were all the most original spiritual power and instantly began to affect each other. Because of the time of cultivation, some of the original spiritual power was deep, and some of the spiritual power was shallow. This was a normal phenomenon. But when the great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art began to operate fully, all the spiritual power was like one, and began to flow according to the Yin and Yang 5 elements. Metal gave birth to water, water gave birth to wood, wood gave birth to fire, fire gave birth to earth, earth gave birth to metal. The 5 elements gave birth to each other, and all the spiritual power began to skyrocket under the stimulation of the mutual generation attribute. The total amount of all the spiritual power, under this nature of the 5 elements, began to slowly balance. The least third fire spirit power, the total amount increased wildly, and the most 5th earth true essence was slowly decreasing and gradually converging. In the end, the total amount of all the spiritual power became almost exactly the same. Then the circulation of the Yin and Yang 5 elements began. Metal restrained wood, wood restrained earth, earth restrained water, water restrained fire, fire restrained metal. The 5 elements restrained each other. All the original spiritual power began to restrain each other again, and the total amount continued to decrease. This situation appeared when Yang Chun began to cultivate the Yin and Yang 5-element secret art. The positive Yin and Yang 5 elements increased the spiritual power, but the negative Yin and Yang 5 elements consumed the spiritual power, and at the same time, it polished all the spiritual power to become more and more pure. Because of the lack of a kind of third fire true essence, it has not been able to reach the point of perfection. Now that the great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art was completed, all the spiritual power began this positive and negative cycle process. In less than 6 months, the Yin and Yang 5-element spirit power in Yang Chun's body was condensed into an abnormally pure state. This condensing effect was far better than the effect of purifying the spiritual power in each of the original true secrets art cultivation methods. Just like this, the quality of the original spiritual power in Yang Chun's body was almost as good as Li Cheng's. However, Yang Chun also knew that there was still a big gap between him and Li Cheng. He had already had such an adventure. He really didn't know how Li Cheng did all this. The great Yin and Yang 5-element secret art was completed. Even if there was a negative 5 elements that constantly consumed and condensed the spiritual power, the speed of Yang Chun's spiritual power growth still surprised Yang Chun. Even if he couldn't say that it was 10 times faster than before, but it was still 3 times faster. In just half a year, Yang Chun's spiritual power cultivation base directly rushed to the peak of the middle yuanying stage, and it seemed that he was only 1 step away from being able to step into the late yuanying stage. This was the result of Yang Chun's constant attention to the condensation of spiritual power. If he let go, he believed that he could reach the late yuanying stage, but it was just a matter of turning over his hand. There was another complete change in his sea of consciousness. The Yang fire dragon of the Yin-Yang heaven-burning fire, after adding the third fire true secret art, was also like a Yin fire dragon. The scales and claws appeared, and the carvings became lifelike. Chapter 1165. Originally, The yin-yang heaven-burning fire only had the fourth fire true essence and no third fire true essence, so the development was not balanced. This was also the reason why Yang Chun did not dare to absorb more advanced fire seeds, for fear of the devastating consequences after this balance was completely broken. Now that the third fire true essence was finally completed, there was no need to worry about the imbalance of yin and yang, and the yin-yang heaven-burning fire could finally absorb those fifth-grade fire seeds unscrupulously. The change in the sea of consciousness not only made the yang fire dragon become more and more lifelike, but also directly led to the further growth of the spiritual awareness. The spiritual awareness of the seventh grade of the human immortal, even with the powerful cultivation method of the three purities secret art, has not grown significantly in the more than 100 years after leaving the demon continent. No way, compared to the spirit stones that have been growing step by step for more than 100 years, the seventh grade of the human immortal was a bit too huge, so that it could not show an obvious effect at all. But at this moment, the growth of the spiritual awareness that had been stagnant for a long time came again, and Yang Chen's spiritual awareness directly crossed two realms and rushed to the ninth grade of the human immortal. Only a little bit more, he could enter the realm of the earth immortal. The three purities secret art finally he showed the powerful essence again. The sea of consciousness suddenly expanded several times and then began to shrink slowly. Between the condensation and compression of the spiritual awareness, the sea of consciousness had become stronger than steel. Then, Yang Shan found that the gap between his spiritual power cultivation base and spiritual awareness cultivation base seemed to be big enough to reach the edge of the split of the spiritual awareness again. Shocked by this result, Yang Chun hurriedly stopped the cultivation of the three purities secret art. It seems that for a long time in the future, he could only work hard to cultivate and let the growth of his spiritual power cultivation base catch up with the growth of his spiritual awareness as soon as possible. All the great yin-yang five elements, flying sword, all the finished product were taken out and carefully sacrificial refining again. Anyway, Yang Chun had enough good materials on him, and this sacrificial refining added a lot of them. Every flying sword was carefully sacrificial refining. The heavenly spirit treasure refining secret art, the earth fiend sacrificial formation secret art, and the universe treasure raising secret art took turns, and almost all the flying sword's quality was improved by a small realm. This round of refinement took more than 3 years. In addition to the flying sword, Yang Chun did not favor one over the other. The medicine garden, the profound spirit furnace, the golden bell, the rope hook, the wine gourd, the flying shuttle, the sea jasper cup, and the medicine nourishing gourd were all refined in turn and then nourished by themselves. After he was done with all this, Yang Chun counted on his fingers. It had already been close to 10 years. As he was immersed in refining the magic treasure, he did not notice the passage of time. Now that everything was done, he felt that he should come out of seclusion to take a look. However, as soon as he came out of the Dragon Palace, he found that there seemed to be something wrong with his courtyard. However, he was unable to pinpoint exactly what was wrong. You came out of seclusion. A slightly familiar yet still unfamiliar female voice rang in Yang Chen's ears, and the voice seemed to be filled with surprise. Yang Chen turned his head and saw two faces that he would never have expected to see. One was the female elder of the Taishaman, Tao Junki, and the other was the genius disciple of the Qinquan sect, Shi Wushuan. What was going on? How could the people of the Taishaman and the Qinquan sect appear in the small courtyard, where he was in seclusion? In the midst of his surprise, Yang Chen's spiritual awareness suddenly found that a few figures that made people speechless were coming towards this side. Looking at the almost identical body shape, Yang Chen knew without asking that these must be the 5 Murong sisters of the 5 Elements sect. He had actually cultivated in seclusion for 10 years under the eyes of these female disciples of the Taishaman, the 5 Elements sect, and the Qinquan sect. This discovery made Yang Chun almost have goosebumps all over his body. What had happened to the sect? Could it be that it had been exterminated again? How could such a thing happen? When his spiritual awareness expanded outward, Yang Chun was slightly relieved. The familiar figures around him were still the disciples of the Chunyang Palace. Everyone seemed to be normal. Even the original servants of Gao Yu and Gong Sunling in Yangchen's courtyard were still there. It seemed that there was nothing wrong. In just a while, 5 beautiful figures that were exactly the same appeared in front of Yangchen. They were the 5 Murong sisters of the 5 Elements sect. In addition to Tao Junqi and Shi Wushuang, the 3 major sect's female protagonists who proposed marriage for him were all here. Yangchen has 10,000 years of memories of his previous life, and even has 4 beautiful and unparalleled wives, but Yangchen has never experienced such a situation. He didn't know what to say. He just said these 2 words and didn't know what to say. He was stunned in place. You are in seclusion here, and there are not a few capable people to serve you, so we will help you take care of it. Fairy Qing Mu Shi Wushuang was worthy of being the most skillful. Her face was calm with a smile that made people feel cordial. With her peerless appearance, things were explained very clearly in a few words. Just after Fairy Qing Mu finished speaking, Tao Junqi went on to add, "The head of the palace has agreed to this matter. If you need anything, you can tell us." The style of the royal sister, coupled with her high status in the mortal world, with such an attitude to talk to Yangchen, gave people a different kind of attraction. Although the 5 Murong sisters next to her did not say much, they all nodded in unison. The 5 identical, peerless, enchanting women made the same movements, which made people feel relaxed and happy. What made Yangchen feel strange was that in the tone of their conversation with Yangchen, they only used the title as if they were communicating with a person of the same generation. This was very unusual. Not to mention others, Tao Junqi was definitely higher in seniority than Yangchen. It was not an exaggeration to casually call Yangchen a kid. Now, they were all talking in this tone. How could Yangchen feel comfortable? Wasn't the marriage proposal rejected in the past? What changes have occurred this time? I just came out of seclusion. I will go to see the elders in the palace first. Yangchen subconsciously used this reason to resist for a while, at least to find the master of the palace, and ask them clearly. So far, Yangchen's brain was full of fog. Palace Master, Tao Junqi, Shi Wushuang, and the 5 Murong sisters. What is going on? In the meeting hall, with several restrictions, Yangchen faced all the high-level officials and asked the head of the palace with a wry smile. "Oh, we agreed to their matter." The head of the palace replied very casually. "But others don't say Tao Junqi is an elder of Taishimen." Yangchen did not understand, but this matter could not be casually agreed. He quickly found a reason first. Taishimen have always wanted to harm my Chunyang palace. What's wrong with Taishimen? They are allowed to take the idea of our sect, but we can't collect some interest? They can't take all the good things, right? Before the head of the palace answered, Wang Yong, the master ancestor of Yangchen, had already replied very loudly, "Yangchen, I order you as the master ancestor to sleep with her." Chapter 1166. Wang Yong's fierceness made Yangchen speechless for a while. When he turned his eyes to the elders seemed to be laughing and watching the show. He really didn't know what everyone was thinking. How could they let those women go outside his retreat? Once they had any evil intentions, although Yangchen could not protect himself, he would inevitably expose many secrets. For example, the Dragon Palace or others. This was what Yangchen was not happy about. "Master, what about senior sister?" In the face of his own ancestor, Yangchen couldn't talk back too much, but he still had to argue, so he immediately asked, "They are the wives, and these are the concubines. What can I do?" Sure enough, Wang Yong had already thought of a countermeasure. He made the decision as if he was the master of the house. When you sit, they stand. When you eat, they serve. Such a good thing. Are you not happy? Yangchen was speechless again. It seemed that he couldn't communicate too much with the ancestor. He turned to the head of the palace and asked carefully, "Palace Master, didn't you already refuse at the time? How can there be future troubles? The 3 major sects are dead to you." The head of the palace also smiled helplessly. Shortly after you retreated, they came to the door and said that the rumors outside were unbearable and they could not raise their heads. For the sake of their own reputation, they can't let outsiders make it worse, so they can only recognize you. "Kid, your luck is not shallow. Elder Su next to him smiled and joked, "The beautiful female disciples of the five major sect are all in one net. There is no more beautiful man in the world than you." Elder Su was not lying. In terms of status, Yang Chun may not be able to catch up with the sect master of the big sect for the time being, but from this point of view, there was really no more beautiful man than Yang Chun. There were so many incomparably beautiful women, and all of them were from famous families with high cultivation. Any one of them would have countless fans, and all of them were actually pestering Yang Chun. Even if he didn't have the title of an alchemist, it was enough to make him famous. Speaking of which, the top management of Chunyang Palace probably had no other way. The three great sect actually used this kind of shameless method to force their own female disciples over, so they had no choice but to accept them. No matter how the head of the palace and the others euphemistically refused, these women were determined to be Yang Chun. In addition, the three major sect added fuel to the fire, and these women threatened with their own reputation. Even the head of the palace could not bear the pressure in the end. In a situation where he couldn't immediately fall out with them, he could only agree to let them interact with Yang Chun for a period of time. If they could get along well, then everything would be fine. If it doesn't work, then we'll talk about something else. But everyone understood that since the women came prepared, they would definitely not give up until they achieved their goal. How could they have discord with Yang Chun? In front of Yang Chun, they would definitely be obedient, and maybe there would be other tricks to help them. All the success or failure seemed to be on Yang Chun. Wang Yong was also angry with this matter, so he would say those words to vent his anger. Otherwise, how could a Deshang stage elder, who was highly respected, say such words as sleeping with her? Was it because of him? Yang Chun had a helpless smile on his face. This was really a person sitting at home, and disaster came from the sky. Since the last time he helped Mu Mingyuan, he had been in the sex retreat for alchemy and cultivation. He didn't go out of the door. Could this also attract a bunch of beautiful women? If it was someone else, maybe they wouldn't know how happy they would be to be smashed by this golden pie falling from the sky. But how could Yang Chun not know the key to it? Where was this happiness? It was clearly a bunch of trouble. Now he just came out and saw the head of the palace and the elders. He hadn't seen his wives yet. Who knew how to explain it to them? This was really inexplicable and inexplicable. How can this disciple be so unlucky? Yang Chun said with a bitter face, "What should I do? A few beautiful women favor you. Others are envious of your boundless luck. And you still have this kind of expression?" Wang Yong also knew that there was a lot of trouble, but for the time being, Chunyang Palace did not have the capital to fall out with the three major sect, so he could only delay it like this. It's not a big deal to get along with each other first. If it doesn't work, I will say that it is not suitable. If you are an alchemy master, it is better than the sect directly refusing. It had to be said that although Yang Chun did not go out much recently, the limelight was a bit big. Not to mention the 100-year pill, even the acquired spirit root was made. With such a posture, he was definitely the most outstanding one among the group of people with a limitless future. It was impossible for the three major sect not to be tempted. Such a talent, in any case, must have a little relationship with him, creating a situation of traveling to their own sect. Now the development of the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect in the past few hundred years has vaguely exceeded the expectations of the three major sect, and all of them were related to Yang Chun. Since they couldn't kill him, they must have a relationship with him. Otherwise, their own sect would fall further and further, which was not what any sect was willing to see. Taishaman did not have such worries. Anyway, in a few decades, the universe everlasting spirit suppressing formation would begin to operate. At that time, not to mention the four major sect, even if the four major sect joined up, they would not be able to catch up with the pace of development of Taishaman. However, wasn't there a problem of avoiding suspicion? Everyone was worried. Only you were not worried. What did this mean? Could it be that there was a secret? When the universe everlasting spirit suppressing formation was exposed, the trouble would be even bigger. It was better to advance and retreat with everyone for the time being. At most, a female elder would be wronged. Moreover, if she could really have a good relationship with Yang Chun, Tao the junkie would not be wronged at all. If Yang Chun wanted medicinal pills, he had medicinal pills and spirit stones. He would never disgrace his own elder. Maybe Elder Tao would take a big advantage in the end. Even if he did not rely on the universe's everlasting essence suppressing formation, Elder Tao could have a good home. The three major sects jointly pressured. Even the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had to reluctantly agree. On the side of Chunyang Palace, it was even more impossible to have too many obstacles. No matter what the head of the palace said, they were determined that their reputation would be damaged. No one could say anything. Speaking of which, didn't Shi Shan of the Green Jade Immortal Island use the same reason to slowly marry Yang Chun at the beginning? Why can you use it, but other sects can't use it? The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect finally had nothing to say, and Chunyang Palace was even more helpless. Since you were determined that you can't provoke the Green Jade Immortal Island, could it be that my Taishaman's Chinquin sect and the Five Elements sect are easy to provoke? Chapter 1167. So, when Yang Chun came out of seclusion, he saw 7 female masters who could shake the heavens and the earth, standing at his door like a virtuous little wife, waiting for him without saying a word. Gao Yu and Gong Sunling naturally knew about this, but the head of the palace and several elders couldn't help it. Under the persuasion, the 2 women were also somewhat dumbfounded and could only acquiesce to them like this. However, the 2 women simply hid far away from the sect's task. They didn't want to see Yang Chun entanglement with several beauties. After saying these things, Yang Chun and the elders were speechless for a while in the council hall. The head of the palace remembered and asked about the effect of Yang Chen's retreat. Your cultivation is good, but when you come out, your mood is very bad. Yang Chun still hasn't been able to fully accept the fact that the elders of his own sect have kicked him into the fire pit, and his answer was weak. There is nothing big in the sect. Everything is in order. You can solve them with peace of mind. The head of the palace also couldn't bear it. He could only drop this sentence, and then no longer said anything. Anyway, as long as you are careful, you will not suffer. The ancestor Wang Yong once again comforted him. Since they have delivered themselves to the door, then let's eat them clean. Whether you recognize the account or not depends on whether you are happy or not. For Wang Yong, his own grand disciple, was so promising, he also had a face. As he said, as long as there was no problem with Yang Chen's safety, the beauties would never be a loss. At Wang Yong's realm, many things were also very open. Since the purpose of the other party was clear, there was no need to hide it. They should eat, drink, and take advantage of it. It was not a big deal to give them a little discount in the end. Anyway, as long as it did not surpass the Green Jade Immortal Island and Blue Cloud sect, it was better than now, and no one could pick out the thorns. After all, the Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had cooperated many times from the beginning, and their friendship was not ordinary. In the memories of Yang Chen's previous life, even among the immortals, there was no lack of lustful immortals. In any case, at that level, as long as it wasn't forced, everyone would be willing, and it would be a wonderful story for outsiders to talk about. However, Yang Chun had never thought that after his rebirth, before he had even transcended the tribulation and ascended, he would already be known as a lecher. How could a pure man who had maintained his virginity in his previous life endure this? What's more, it would be a wonderful story if both parties were willing and did not force each other. But now, it was obvious that he was the one being forced, and he had no place to reason with. Was there still justice in this world? Not to mention a perfected golden immortal. Even the Jade Emperor and the 3 pure Taoist ancestors would not be able to do anything about it. Needless to say, Yang Chun was now in the middle Yuanying stage. So what if he could kill a Deshang stage master? Even if he could kill a worldly immortal, he couldn't kill those beauties, right? He wanted to find Gao Yu and Gong Sunling to relieve his depression, but Yang Chun found that the 2 women were not in Chunyang Palace at all. It was estimated that they were angry and left far away. There was never a moment when Yang Chun looked at his courtyard and had a feeling that he didn't want to go back. In the past, as long as he thought that Gao Yu and Gong Sunling were waiting for him there, his heart would feel warm, but now it was only a burst of depression. The disciples of Chunyang Palace, Whether they were elders or juniors, when they saw Yang Chun, they all smiled and congratulated him. Who could know the sorrow in Yang Chun's heart at the moment? Even if he was reluctant, Yang Chun had to return to his courtyard to face the 7 girls. Bracing himself, Yang Chun walked into his courtyard. As Yang Chun expected, the 7 girls were waiting for him in the courtyard. "You're back." Tao Junkie was the oldest and the most senior. She stood in the middle, like a wife welcoming her husband home, and greeted him very virtuously. "After 10 years of closed-door training, you haven't been exposed to worldly affairs. You must be bitter." Shi Wushuang smiled and arranged on the side. "Sister Murong has prepared some wine and dishes. You can taste their cooking." While she was talking, the Murong 5 sisters had already brought up a few trays from behind. Before Yang Chun could react, the small stone table in the courtyard had been covered with several delicate-looking dishes, as well as a jade pot and a jade cup. The wine had not yet been poured out, but the fragrance of the wine had already reached his nose. Yang Chun loved delicious food, good wine, good tea, and good clothes. These habits seemed to have been spread out a long time ago. Even his 4 wives had mastered a craft because of Yang Chun's hobbies. Of course, now they also had a reputation of being a good beauty. Shi Wushuang and the others were very familiar with Yang Chun's hobbies, but they didn't know if the Murong sisters had learned their cooking skills recently. Since the beauties had already made their moves, if Yang Chun ignored them, it would be really rude. Yang Chun simply gritted his teeth. Since he was already here, he might as well make the best of it. He sat down with a golden knife and picked up the jade chopsticks that had been placed on the table, ready to enjoy it. Before Yang Chun could choose a dish, one of the Murong sisters rushed ahead of him. She took a jade plate and picked up a dish from a few dishes on the table. She scooped a little with a spoon and placed it in front of Yang Chun. She said shyly, "This is my cooking. Have a taste." During this time, the other Murong sister had already stood behind Yang Chun. She stretched out her jade hand and placed it on Yang Chun's shoulder, massaging it gently. Another woman picked up the wine pot and poured a full cup for Yang Chun. Then, the next one picked up a jade cup and brought it to Yang Chun's mouth. When he thought of the 5 sky supporting sisters of the 5 elements sect serving him like this, Yang Chun felt like he was in a dream. He was so shocked that he almost didn't dare to move. "Don't be nervous. My reputation is already involved with yours. We can't get rid of it in this life." The one who spoke was Shi Wushuang, the Greenwood Fairy. She lowered her eyes slightly and said with a slight grievance, "It's not that we are lowly, but you are too outstanding. For the sake of the sect, we are also willing to serve you as slaves or maids. You decide." While Yang Chun was stunned, Tao Junkie, who was next to him, also said with a slightly wronged expression, "We don't ask for anything else. We only ask that you take care of our sect in the future." Seeing that Yang Chun's body had stiffened, Shi Wushuang asked in confusion, "You don't like this?" For fear of causing Yang Chun's misunderstanding, she quickly explained, "We just know from an old acquaintance of yours that you like these." As Shi Wushuang spoke, Tao Junkie had already waved her hand. She grabbed a person from an unknown magic treasure and threw him on the ground. Chapter 1168. Yang Chun still hasn't figured out why these proud women of the 3 major sect would suddenly make such a gesture to please himself. But after seeing the figure on the ground, he was somewhat clear in his heart, and at the same time, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The person on the ground was really an acquaintance of Yang Chun. When Yang Chun and Gong Sunling went to the demon sect to find the 7th metal true essence solution, because their cultivation was relatively low, only in the Jedon realm, they disguised themselves and did as the Romans do. At that time, they met this person on the ground. Lady Fenghua, Xiao Fenghua, the elder of Yin Yang Demon School, was invincible in the art of charm, and was also a figure of authority in the demon sect. However, because of the plot against Wuji Demon School Yi Jinxiong at that time, the plan failed, so she was scared and hid directly. Before leaving, Lady Fenghua mistakenly thought that Yang Chun was a descendant of the demon sect who cultivated the jade cultivation method, so she tried her best to seduce Yang Chun. At that time, in addition to Gong Sunling, there were 5 apprentices of Wan Qian around Yang Chun. In order not to be exposed, Yang Chun enjoyed the luck of women at that time. At that time, the 5 women were dressed in revealing clothes, and the service was even more attentive. In addition, Gong Sunling also had the intention to let go of the world with her lover. Yang Chun didn't even need to move his hand. He just stretched out his hand and opened his mouth. Perhaps it was because of the impression left on Lady Fanghua at that time that she thought that he liked the service of beautiful women. So the 7 proud women of the 3 major sect made such a move. Speaking of it, it was not surprising that Lady Fanghua fell into the hands of the 7 girls. Lady Fanghua, who was still trapped in the peak yuanying stage, had no chance to resist in front of Tao Junki, who was in the late Deshang stage, and the 5 Murong sisters who were in the early Deshang stage. Even Shi Wushuang, the Greenwood Fairy, who was also at the peak of the nascent soul realm, was no match for her. It was only natural that he would be captured. Yang Chun was so famous that many people kept his portrait. It was not surprising that Lady Fanghua knew Yang Chun's identity later. However, he didn't expect that things would be so coincidental that Lady Fanghua would fall into the hands of the 7 girls and pass on some bad guesses to them. That was why Yang Chun felt so uncomfortable now. Slave Fanghua greets the master. Although Lady Fanghua was controlled, she was not unconscious and was still conscious. When he saw Yang Chun, he no longer dared to be as arrogant as before. He immediately tidied up his clothes and knelt on the ground respectfully. However, although he knelt very neatly, the curve of his body became more and more prominent, especially the humble posture, which could arouse people's desire. Yang Chun naturally didn't care, but the 7 girls looked at it with a red face. This witch, even the action of greeting, was so tempting. She really was the witch of the demon sex, cheap. Thinking of how Yang Chun really liked this, they were all shy. In the past, Lady Fanghua and Yang Chun played the game of master and slave. Now it was just turning the game of that year into reality. For Lady Fanghua, the most important thing now was to save her life. As for the illusory title, what was the use of it? Yang Chun smiled bitterly in his heart again. It seemed that the 7 girls were really unscrupulous in order to please him. They could even find out the past that had been hidden for so long, which also showed the strength of the 3 major sect. If the 7 girls just put on an obedient posture to please him, Yang Chun didn't mind to pretend to be polite and then send them away. But the problem was that they just showed their position as soon as they came up. First, it was for the reputation of the girls, and second, it was for the sect. To be honest, it was for the sect, but it made Yang Chun unable to resist. Yang Chun couldn't say that he and the sect didn't deal with each other, and he didn't like your sect, so he didn't agree, right? Then, Yang Chun wasn't trying to keep the peace, but he was provoking and causing trouble. Let's have a good talk. Yang Chun could only smile bitterly. Then he shook his shoulders slightly, smiled at the Murong sisters behind him, and reached out to ask them to sit down. This time, the girls didn't disobey, and they sat down. Seeing that there were no other servants around, Yang Chun glanced at Lady Fanghua, who was kneeling on the ground, and shouted coldly, "Aren't you going to get up and serve me?" He chased away the original servants. The 7 girls probably didn't want others to see them like that. So at this time, Lady Fanghua became the most suitable servant. Lady Fanghua quickly got up and quickly prepared the tableware for the 7 girls. She placed the wine glasses, took the wine pot, and poured wine for them one by one. Then, she stood behind Yang Chun respectfully. This battle was completely different from the time when they were kneeling. She was cold and aloof, as if she had suddenly turned into a cold and beautiful winter plum. She was as dignified as she could be, and as virtuous as she could be. If everyone didn't know that she was an elder of the demon sect, they might have thought that she was a noble lady. Her ever-changing temperament instantly stunned the 7 girls. When they saw that Yang Chun seemed to be used to it, the 7 girls began to think in their hearts. Could it be that Yang Chun likes this ever-changing temperament? Since you've made it so clear, if I continue to be unreasonable, then I won't be a man. Yang Chun picked up his wine glass and said to the 7 girls, "I've tarnished your reputation for no reason, and Yang Chun has nothing to repay you with. I'll drink as a punishment, and if you need me to do anything in the future, I will not refuse." The 7 girls didn't put on airs. They stood up and drank with Yang Chun before they sat back down. The sect has orders, so it's only natural that I've wronged you. I hereby apologize to you for dragging you into this. It's all my fault, and I hope that you can forgive me. Yang Chun apologized again. This kind of thing couldn't be said to be the other party's fault, right? I believe that you are also very wronged, and you don't want to be with a stranger for no reason. Yang Chun organized the wording and slowly said to the 7 girls, who were a little shy, "It's not that this younger brother is presumptuous, but this kind of big thing, it's also necessary to pay attention to mutual affection, and both parties are willing to be together. This younger brother also feels that it's wrong for you sisters to be forced to be together." Feeling that Yang Chun was going to say the key point, the 7 girls all looked up at Yang Chun. 7 pairs of beautiful eyes stared at Yang Chun, and there were 5 pairs of beautiful eyes that were almost exactly the same. The psychological pressure on Yang Chun was even greater than the 7 Deshang stage enemies that Yang Chun faced. He didn't know why, but Yang Chun's heart suddenly became a little soft. The words of refusal that were originally on his mouth turned into another argument. "I think at least we have to get to know each other for a period of time and then talk about other things in detail. If it feels wrong, we can talk about other things. What do you think?" When it came to these words, Yang Chun's voice was almost getting lower and lower, and he couldn't wait to slap himself in the face. Chapter 1169. To be honest, if Yang Chun could choose, Yang Chun would rather choose to fight against 70 enemies than face 7 beautiful women. Even if he had 10,000 years of life experience in his previous life, how could a 10,000-year-old virgin have the experience to deal with relationships? In this life, he had already had 4 wives, but Yang Chun still hadn't learned how to deal with relationships. In fact, it wasn't just Yang Chun. All the cultivators were probably the same. In the world of cultivation, who would value relationships between men and women so much? Many cultivation companions who practiced dual cultivation in the beginning just didn't dislike each other. Then, everyone could improve their cultivation through dual cultivation. How could there be a relationship? Even if there was, it was only after a long period of time that they slowly cultivated it. As the saying goes, feelings grow with time. Moreover, cultivators wouldn't easily quarrel over trivial matters. Everyone was an expert, so it was natural for them to get along happily. As soon as Yang Chun said this, the 7 girls' eyes seemed to flash. Yang Chun didn't directly refuse, and he was willing to let everyone understand each other. For the 7 girls, this was a different feeling. The sect wanted them to get close to Yang Chun no matter what, and to become Yang Chun's pillow. Compared to Yang Chun, who was so considerate of them and felt wronged for them, it was like heaven and earth. Being born in the sect, they naturally had to repay the sect's kindness. Even if it was just to complete the sect's mission, they had to get close to Yang Chun. Now that Yang Chun was so considerate of their feelings, how could the 7 girls not have a good impression of him? Also, don't always think about pleasing others. It was unknown what was wrong with Yang Chun, but he actually said something that even he wanted to slap himself a million times. "If I really like you one day, I will definitely like you for who you really are and not deliberately put on a show to please me. Do you understand?" All the girls nodded silently. In this atmosphere, Yang Chun hastily ate a tasteless meal with the 7 girls. Then, with the excuse of delivering some new goods to Wanbao Tower, he quickly fled from his courtyard with Lady Fanghua, as if they were fleeing from a disaster. The reason why Yang Chun brought Lady Fanghua along was that the demoness had absolute authority in dealing with such matters. It would be a waste not to consult him on such a difficult matter. In Du Qian's room, Yang Chun bluntly greeted Du Qian. Then, he drove Du Qian out and occupied his room. Yang Chun quickly arranged a restriction and began to consult Lady Fanghua. Du Qian, who was confused, was chased out. He watched as Yang Chun quickly set up restrictions in the room. He couldn't help but shake his head. Isn't this junior brother Yang too impatient? He clearly had 7 charming and enchanting women in his courtyard. So where did he bring back such a seductive beauty? If Yang Chun knew what Du Qian was thinking at this moment, he would definitely spit out a mouthful of old blood. His clean reputation of hundreds of years was completely destroyed in one day. At this time, even the people in the sect agreed with Yang Qin's lustful reputation. However, no one would have any opinion on this. Although the young palace master was lustful, it was because he had the ability. Many people relied on Yang Qin's medicinal pills to improve their realms. They felt that their future was bright. Why would they care about such trivial matters? Moreover, when did the young palace master force anyone? Wasn't it all forced? Fanhua, you say, wasn't my performance just now very disappointing? Yang Chen wanted to know Lady Fanghua's opinion, so he asked directly. Lady Fanghua had been serving there. After the initial panic, she found that Yang Chen didn't mean to kill her, so she was delighted. Since she was a child, Lady Fanghua had seen many such things. After she saw the performance of the 7 girls, she was even more convinced that with her own charming means, sooner or later, she could confuse Yang Chen. Master performed very well. Listening to Yang Chen's question, Lady Fanghua flattered without a trace. They are all together, and a lot of words are not suitable to say. It's just right to say it this way. Everyone will not be embarrassed, and there is no reason to be angry. Master handled it very well. What should I do next? Yang Chen also seemed to understand the nature of Lady Fanghua. He directly reached out and took out a medicinal pill and sent it to Lady Fanghua's eyes. Help me come up with some ideas. If the effect is good, this Millennium Appearance Pill is yours. The appearance pill was so popular that even if Yang Chen didn't understand it at first, he now understood some women's psychology. Such a medicinal pill was simply the best temptation for a woman like Lady Fanghua. Lady Fanghua couldn't help but help. Really? Lady Fanghua was ecstatic. She stared at the appearance pill between Yang Chen's fingers, and she could no longer look away. Millennium Appearance Pill. Even if Lady Fanghua was asked to strip in front of the entire Chunyang Palace, she would probably be willing. Of course, Yang Chen didn't say anything. He reached out and flicked the appearance pill into Lady Fanghua's hand. You are experienced. Just tell me, what should I do next? What is the attitude of the 4 madams? Lady Fanghua was not the kind of person who would not work after getting paid. After getting the appearance pill, she was refreshed and immediately began to ask questions. Of course, she knew that Yang Chen already had 4 wives, Bai Xia, Lu Yun, Han Mei, and Shui Wu. At this time, of course, she wanted to know the reaction of the main wives. They will not oppose my decision. Yang Chen thought for a while and gave this answer. He had confidence in the 4 women, so his answer was also resolute. Master is really the head of the family. Lady Fanghua also couldn't help but marvel. The 4 fairies, Bai Xia, Lu Yun, Han Mei, and Shui Wu, were all famous figures outside. However, they were so obedient in front of Yang Chen. She couldn't help but be convinced. Stop talking nonsense. Yang Chen was a little impatient and directly urged, What should I do? Actually, you don't have to do anything for the time being. Lady Fanghua looked refreshed and hurriedly replied. Now her life was in the hands of Yang Chen at any time, so she couldn't slack off. Master, you have given them hope just now. As long as you find a chance to separate them and get along with them one by one, I believe that with this foundation, they will soon give in. What do you mean? The more Yang Chen listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. He wanted Lady Fanghua to think of a way to reject the 7 girls from the 3 major sects. Why did it sound like he wanted to take them in as well? For the time being, they already have a good impression of you. In addition to the pressure from their respective sects, as long as Master shows his care for their sect at the appropriate time, I believe it won't take long for Master to get what he wants. Lady Fanghua answered with certainty. Pa! Yang Chen's hand slapped heavily on his forehead. What was going on? Chapter 1170. Needless to ask, Yang Chen only needed to recall the words he asked Lady Fanghua to understand that Lady Fanghua must have reversed his question. What he wanted was a way to refuse the 7 girls of the 3 great sect. But Lady Fanghua was obviously the opposite. Of course, this was because Yang Chen did not make it clear. He hurriedly asked Lady Fanghua what he should do and forgot to say what he wanted to achieve. How to get rid of them. Yang Chen had to grit his teeth and say this sentence. He was already looking forward to the whole result. Get rid of them? Lady Fanghua was shocked. Why? It was such a good opportunity. If any disciple of the Demon Gate she knew had such an opportunity, he would definitely take all of them into his harem at all costs. They were the disciples of the three great sect, the elders of the Taishaman sect, the fairies of the Chinquan sect, and the five sisters of the Murong sect. Not to mention their identity and the cultivation of the Mahayana stage. Just the five beauties with the same attributes were enough to make any man's lust explode. Right? Such a good thing came to his door. How could Yang Chun think of pushing it out? Was it because of the four wives at home? But Yang Chun just said that as long as he made his own decision, the four fairies would definitely not disobey Yang Chen's meaning. He had the seven beauties, the support of the sect behind him, and the promotion of each sect. This kind of thing would happen naturally. As long as it was done, wouldn't Yang Chun be able to do whatever he wanted in the Dao sect? Chunyang Palace would also change the embarrassment of having no strong backing. If there was a sect that was most likely to become one of the six great sects in the future, besides Danding's sect, Chunyang Palace was the only one left. It was a good thing for both public and private reasons. Lady Fanghua could not think of a reason for Yang Chun to refuse such a thing. Be it from the perspective of the Dao sect or the Demon sect, there was no reason to reject it. Yang Chun, was he suddenly lacking a mind? Lady Fanghua didn't dare to suggest to Yang Chun to reject the seven girls for the time being. When she accidentally revealed her whereabouts and was discovered by the five Murong sisters, it was truly a tragedy. Since she couldn't defeat him with her cultivation, her charm technique was useless. If she hadn't revealed that she knew Yang Chun in time, she would have been long dead. She was the one who taught the Murong clan sisters how to behave. In the past, when Yang Chun was in the territory of the evil cult, he behaved like this, and the five women served him. At that time, the five women were still of the metal attribute, and their cultivation base was also low. There were just five Jit on stage. How could it be as satisfying as the five Murong sisters who had all five elements and were all in the early Dashang stage? Greenwood Fairy and Tao Junkie, the two who joined later, also let her taste the taste of horror. She thought that she was also a number one figure in the demon sect. Now she understood that in the eyes of these big sect, they just didn't want to kill her for the time being. When they wanted her to die, she had to die. Come up with an idea to make the plan of the seven girls fail? Lady Fanghua didn't have such courage. However, Yang Chun could now control the life and death of Lady Fanghua at any time, which Lady Fanghua had a clear understanding of. It was a pity that she was now caught in the middle of both sides. She didn't even dare to say a word. After thinking about it and weighing it, Lady Fanghua still felt that Yang Chun was relatively less dangerous. Looking at Yang Chun's attitude towards the seven girls, it seemed that Yang Chun had a fatal weakness. If he didn't make up his mind to kill from the beginning, then Yang Chun would usually be very soft-hearted. This was a flaw that could be used. Yang Chun himself didn't realize it, but it was related to Lady Fanghua's own life, so she could see it clearly. She could only use this to fight for a glimmer of life. Master, if you want to refuse, you should have said it very clearly at the beginning. Lady Fanghua gritted her teeth and began to criticize Yang Chun's approach. Although we cultivators don't care much about this kind of thing, once we give people hope, it will be very troublesome. If you don't make a decision, you will be in chaos. As she spoke, Lady Fanghua secretly observed Yang Chun's reaction, for fear that Yang Chun would be annoyed by her words. After all, she was now using her identity as a servant to criticize her master's approach. Although it was Yang Chun who made the mistake, if Yang Chun became angry out of shame and killed Lady Fanghua to vent his anger, she wouldn't have any room to resist. Seeing that Yang Chun was temporarily annoyed and had no intention of directly taking action, Lady Fanghua also let out a sigh of relief. As long as this was passed, the next step would be easy. After all, it was Yang Chun's own mistake. At that time, Yang Chun didn't make it clear. He couldn't blame Lady Fanghua for not reminding him, right? Yang Chun was indeed very regretful. At that time, why did he talk nonsense in the eyes of the seven girls as if he had taken the wrong medicine? At that time, it was ridiculous that he thought he had dealt with it very well. Now that Lady Fanghua said it, he realized that he had done a very stupid thing. Giving others hope and then rejecting them flatly would have no other result except to provoke hatred between the two sides. If it was someone else, it would be fine. At worst, he could ignore it. But if the other party pushed him too hard, Yang Chen didn't care about destroying the flowers. Even mysterious fairy of the ninth heaven and fairy Chong, he could be killed by Yang Chen. Why should he be afraid of a few female cultivators in the mortal world? The problem was that those women really couldn't be killed. With the concern of Chunyang Palace, Yang Chen couldn't be free of worries. Having the support of the sect was a good thing most of the time, but sometimes it was also an obstacle. The current situation was an obvious one. Then what should I do? After thinking about it, Yang Chen felt that he shouldn't have regretted it so much. However, Yang Chen was obviously not a person who would vent his anger on others. Since Lady Fanghua had pointed this out, Yang Chen wouldn't vent his anger on others. After being distressed for a while, Yang Chen continued to ask, "In fact, Master, this is a good thing for both public and private reasons. Why refuse?" Lady Fanghua carefully looked at Yang Chen's face and said tentatively, if she could really persuade Yang Chen to accept the 7 girls, she could also have an explanation in front of the 7 girls. "You're not me. How do you know that this is a good thing?" Yang Chen completely lost his temper. He could only roll his eyes and ask. Then he immediately realized that he seemed to have indulged Lady Fanghua too much. She actually wanted to change his mind. He immediately became serious again. "Help me think of a way. What should I do?" "If you have to refuse and don't want to cause the anger of the 3 sects, there's only one way." Lady Fanghua didn't dare to be too presumptuous. If she angered Yang Chen, she would not have a good end now. Maybe the appearance pill would be taken back immediately. She hurriedly said, "Drag it out." Chapter 1171. Drag. Yang Chen listened to the word Lady Fanghua said. After thinking about it, he had to say that it seemed that this was the only way for the time being. However, this was not a complete solution to the problem. The more it was delayed, the more troublesome it would be. Lady Fanghua knew this, and Yang Chen also knew this. But at least that was a matter for the future, and he didn't have to face it right away. And hey, maybe things would be solved naturally later. This is the only way. Yang Chen sighed and said helplessly. Looking up at Lady Fanghua, he reached out and grabbed Lady Fanghua, who was not far away. Lady Fanghua was shocked and was about to scream in horror, but found that Yang Chen's hand did not have any strength. Her heart was a little relieved, and she did not resist, letting Yang Chen do what he wanted. Then, Lady Fanghua saw that Yang Chen reached out and grabbed her chest. This action made Lady Fanghua happy in her heart. Could it be that Yang Chen really liked her? While she was surprised, she saw Yang Chen slap her chest between her breasts. This slap was very powerful, and Lady Fanghua's body flew back involuntarily. But the person was still in the air. It had slowly stopped hovering in the air and restored the kind of peerless temperament. Yang Chen's palm directly unlocked the Murong Five Sisters ban on Lady Fanghua, allowing her to quickly recover all her cultivation. Lady Fanghua didn't know what Yang Chen's intention was, but it was a good thing that her spiritual power was restored. At least in the face of Yang Chen, who had just reached the middle stage of the Yuanying stage. With her strength at the peak of the Yuanying stage, she no longer had to worry about her own safety. "I will unlock your ban. You have to do things for me." Yang Chen was not aware that he was not as strong as Lady Fanghua. He just said with a serious expression, "If you dare to be half-hearted..." Humph. Along with Yang Chen's snort, a majestic aura emerged from Yang Chen's body and directly affected Lady Fanghua. This aura was dignified and reverent. It carried a kind of irresistible strength as it crashed into Lady Fanghua's sea of consciousness. Longwei broke out a little bit, and Yang Chen did not dare to use his full strength. But even so, Lady Fanghua, who was at the peak Yuanying stage, could not bear it. The whole person seemed to have encountered the ruler of the world. She did not even hold on for a few breaths, and her legs were soft, and she sat on the ground in horror. That wasn't enough. After a while, he couldn't even sit on the ground. He directly prostrated himself on the ground, not even daring to raise his head. Longwei's power was so strong that Lady Fanghua did not dare to have any disrespectful thoughts in her heart. Deliberately subduing Lady Fanghua, Yang Chen's aura changed and became the aura of the Blood River. Although most of the killing intent had been absorbed by the immortal beheading blade, only the remaining part was enough to make Lady Fanghua fall into the abyss of terror. In less than 10 minutes, she fainted in horror. Yang Chen ignored Lady Fanghua and sat there quietly thinking about how to deal with the situation in front of him. After sitting for a long time, Lady Fanghua on the ground groaned and slowly woke up. After waking up, Lady Fanghua stood up. The first thing she saw was Yang Chen sitting there with a cold face. Almost instinctively, Lady Fanghua rushed to Yang Chen and kowtowed to the ground again. She put Yang Chen's boots on her head and did not dare to move. Now, Lady Fanghua really regarded herself as Yang Chen's servant. The situation just now was really too shocking. Lady Fanghua realized that she was nothing in front of Yang Chen. If Yang Chen wanted to kill her, he didn't even need to move his hands. He only needed to think about it. The double power of Long Wei and the Blood River made Lady Fanghua completely worship him. How would she dare to have any other thoughts? Even in front of the Murong sisters who captured her alive, Lady Fanghua did not dare to be partial to them. The people of the Demon Gate had one thing. That was, they were very clear about the situation. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. In this sentence, the wise men of the Demon Gate were far more than those of the Dao Gate. In fact, even the 7 girls had to please Yang Chen. Who should Lady Fanghua favor between Yang Chen and the 7 girls? Was there any need to think about it? It was just that at the beginning, Lady Fanghua was shocked by the 7 girls' cultivation. She thought that Yang Chen only got the favor of the 7 girls because of his ability to make elixirs. Now she found that the real powerful person had always been Yang Chen. It seemed that the 7 girls had not realized this for the time being. But this was also good. It was a chance for Lady Fanghua to please Yang Chen. Although Madame Fanghua now considers herself to be Yang Chen's slave, as long as her own means are excellent, it was not a rare thing for a personal made to be more favored than some of the young mistresses who have not yet married into the family. The following days were relatively uneventful. Yang Chen had nothing special for the time being, and the 7 girls were a little relieved with Yang Chen's promise to understand each other. The 7 girls were all smart people. None of them would do that kind of shameless pestering behavior, which would only increase Yang Chen's disgust. Instead, it was better to increase the distance at the right time. After spending a few days with Yang Chen, the 7 girls said goodbye. Of course, when the 7 girls left, they did not forget to go out to train with Yang Chen. Yang Chen could only agree for the time being. As for when to go, he would talk about it after a while. After sending away the 7 girls, Yang Chen appeared in front of the head of the palace again. Now the sect also had to reconsider the relationship and cooperation with the 3 major sects. If it was a long time ago, the 5 major sects would compete to cooperate with Chunyang Palace. Chunyang Palace would definitely be flattered and agree. But now, it was also qualified to distinguish between close and distant, each with different attitudes. The core high-level officials almost gathered to discuss this issue. Of course, the results were also easy to come out. The Green Jade Immortal Island and the Blue Cloud sect had cooperated from the beginning. Of course, their relationship was the closest. The 5 Elements sect and the Qinkuan sect were relatively second, and the Taishaman sect was the worst. No one had any objection to this point. For the time being, the high-level officials were still inclined to Yang Chen not to refuse directly, so as not to be suppressed by the 3 major sects at this critical moment in the development of Chunyang Palace. And Yang Chen was also waiting for the day when the Taishaman would be caught in their own trap. For the time being, it was not appropriate to force them. From this point of view, Yang Chen's expedient disposal was a good way to unintentionally insert a willow tree. Yang Chen also recognized this and no longer hesitated. Next, he would first send the ultimate demonized demon vine to Sun Qingxue, and then accompany Shi Shanshan to complete his promise to interfere with Shi Shanshan's cultivation for the last time. But before that, Yang Chen still had to deal with one person, that was the Lady Fanghua who had always been Yang Chen's slave and almost handled the things around Yang Chen in an orderly manner. Chapter 1172. Lady Fanghua came from Yin Yang Demon School. She was the best at playing with men and women. Although she usually looked awe-inspiring and inviolable, Yang Chen had long known what kind of person she was. Such a person was definitely not suitable to be placed in Chunyang Palace. Not to mention others, just the Taoist teachers in Taoism could scold Chunyang Palace as a pile of garbage. It was already a great achievement for the major sect to accept the demon clan into the Hall of Eccentrics. This was almost the bottom line of many Taoist teachers. If there was another Demoness Hall, then they could only wait to be annihilated. Of course, Yang Chen would not make such a mistake. Therefore, taking Lady Fanghua as a captive was a model of subduing demons and defending the Tao. But if he kept her by his side all the time, it would be a disaster. The world was so big, and there were more than one or two people who knew Lady Fanghua. Therefore, Yang Chen must get rid of Lady Fanghua. However, for the time being, Lady Fanghua was still useful. It would be a pity to kill her. The influence of the pure Yang Palace on the side of the demon sects was not great. Sending Madame Fanghua back was also a very good chess piece. You must know that the Yin Yang demon sect was also a big sect. Even if Madame Fanghua was just an ordinary elder, she couldn't stand the number of masters in the Yin Yang demon sect. It could almost be compared with the 5 major sections. In any case, it was still useful to have one of their own people in it, right? However, Lady Fanghua's status in Yin Yang Demon School was not high, far from the core. In addition, she had provoked Wuji Demon School. After returning, she might be in a difficult situation, which was also a troublesome thing. Since he wanted Lady Fanghua to do things for him, he had to find a way to improve the status and strength of Lady Fanghua, lest she died before accomplishing her task. Speaking of which, as long as her strength was improved, her status would naturally rise. In Dark Sect, it was far more realistic than Taoism. It was not difficult for Yang Chen to improve his cultivation, but in order to reassure Lady Fanghua, Yang Chen still wanted to ask her about her plans. Lady Fanghua had already sworn her loyalty to Yang Chen. In addition to the deterrence of Long Wei and the Scarlet River, there was no doubt about Yang Chen's loyalty to her. No one was willing to seek their own death, especially a beautiful woman who had a steady stream of appearance pill and would become a big shot in Dark Sect in the near future. Help me improve my cultivation base. Madame Fanghua could not believe her ears. After Yang Chen took her to this remote place alone at the gate of Chunyang Palace, she thought that he wanted her to serve him. Lady Fanghua also planned to use all her skills to please Yang Chen. When she was suddenly asked this question, Lady Fanghua was directly stunned. Masters at the peak of nascent soul realm could not control their emotions because of great joy and sorrow. Taoism was a little less like this. After all, they had a strong Taoist heart, but Dark Sect people were different. They were originally the creed of seeking pleasure and having fun. Their expressions of sorrow and joy were completely different. There was no doubt that Yang Chen had a century-old pill in his hands. Otherwise, the 3 major sects would not have to force a few people around Yang Chen. However, such a precious century-old pill cost more than 10 kilograms of top-grade spirit stones. Was he really going to give such a thing to her? Are you going to rely on your own efforts to improve your state of mind, or do you want to directly swallow the century-old pill and rely on your cultivation to resist? Yang Chen gave Lady Fanghua a choice. In fact, this choice was the same as having no choice. As long as it was not a matter of life and death, who would be willing to overdraft their future to improve? Here are a few second-grade questioning inner heart pills. You are already at the peak of nascent soul realm. As long as you take it, you will soon be able to trigger the heavenly tribulation. Yang Chen was not stingy. He directly took out a few questioning inner heart pills and placed them in front of Lady Fanghua. You swallow one first. I will protect you. Yang Chen was never stingy with his own people, especially those who worked for him. This could be seen from Shangwan Feng, Du Qian, Scar, and Senior Wine Immortal. For Lady Fanghua, Yang Chen also treated her equally, although when others looked at Yang Chen with Lady Fanghua, there was always some ambiguity in their eyes. Lady Fanghua finally determined that Yang Chun really wanted to improve her cultivation instead of destroying her. Holding the questioning inner heart pill, she could hardly believe it. At the moment, she swallowed the questioning inner heart pill and then began to meditate without hesitation, regardless of anything else. Yang Chun meditated not far away with all his heart, while protecting, while cultivating, and at the same time refining the space connection point of the demon continent. During the initial refining of the space, the entrance of the immortal beheading platform and the core of the demon continent showed differences. The entrance of the immortal beheading platform was easily completed by Yang Chun in only half a month in the dream recalling technique, but the core of the demon continent took half a year. But Yang Chun had a strong hunch that refining the entrance of the immortal beheading platform was many times more difficult than refining the core of the demon continent. After all, the entrance of the immortal beheading platform crossed the immortal world and the mortal world and was personally refined by the Tao Ancestor Grand Supreme Elderly Lord. The core of the demon continent was just an occasional space gap, and the level of the two sides was not the same. This was also why Yang Chun refined the core of the demon continent from the beginning instead of the entrance of the immortal beheading platform. It was easy at first and then difficult, and the easy ones could also accumulate experience. After all, the cultivation method of refining space was also mostly speculation, and something still needed to be verified with simple things. It had to be said that even the people of the demon sex, those who could cultivate to the peak yuanying stage, were not poor in aptitude, and no one was a fool. In just a few months, Lady Fanghua seemed to have realized a lot of things. Even without the use of the second questioning inner heart pill, it had already triggered the tribulation. Yang Chun stood not far from Lady Fanghua, watching the Yin fire tribulation descend on Lady Fanghua. This distance was simply within the range of Lady Fanghua's tribulation, and Yang Chun was immediately affected by the Yin fire tribulation. Lady Fanghua, after all, was from the demon sect, and it would not change her heart of deception all the time. Although she had enough time to remind Yang Chun to leave the range of the tribulation, she did not do so. Perhaps in her heart, she was forced to submit to Yang Chun, and it was not voluntary. Anyway, she just didn't remind Yang Chun and did not violate her heart demon oath. If Yang Chun couldn't resist the power of the Yin fire tribulation and died, then Lady Fanghua would naturally have no constraints. Was there a better opportunity to kill two birds with one stone? For Lady Fanghua's careful thoughts, Yang Chun was clear in his heart, but in order to deter this woman, Yang Chun did not hesitate to stand in place. With the Yin fire tribulation triggered by Lady Fanghua, Yang Chun had absolute confidence to resist it.